Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Ben 10 unlocked the eternal Omnitrix and romance with Ester and Looma? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Blank, blank, underscore, blank. Chapter 1. The Eternal Awakening. The plumber cruiser hurtled through the amber nebula, plasma shields glowing as they deflected the ionized gas particles that would have corroded ordinary hulls. Ben Tennyson stood at the observation deck, emerald eyes reflecting the cosmic light show. At 19, his lanky teenage frame had filled out with lean muscle, his jawline sharper. Shoulders broader beneath the customized plumber uniform that accommodated the Omnitrix on his left wrist. ETA to Diplomatic Station Epsilon. 4 minutes, announced the ship's AI in its characteristically flat tone. Rook Blanco approached from behind, his Ravanagander features composed as ever. The delegates from 17 systems await your arrival, Ben Dude. Magister 10. Wyson requested I remind you that the Apoplexian ambassador is particularly agitated. When isn't he? Ben replied, running a hand through his tousled brown hair. Let me guess. Someone took his parking spot again. Actually, the hybrid representative questioned the nutritional value of their ceremonial meat platters. Rook's mouth twitched with the hint of a smile, an expression he'd developed after years partnering with Ben. A diplomatic incident was narrowly avoided when Magister Patellidae offered his personal supply of Piscis beetles as a peace offering. Ben turned from the kaleidoscopic nebula, the Omnitrix catching the light. The device had changed little externally over the years, but Azimuth's periodic upgrades had refined its interface and stability. Still, Transformatio N glitches persisted, a reminder that even Galvan genius had its limits. Another day, another interstellar incident to prevent, Ben said, rolling his shoulders. Sometimes I miss when my biggest problem was making it to Mr. Harang's history class on time. You never made it to Mr. Harang's history class on time, Rook pointed out, his literal interpretation of human expressions unchanged despite years on Earth. Ben chuckled. That's kind of the point. The cruiser decelerated as the sprawling latticework of Diplomatic Station Epsilon came into view, a massive orbital platform constructed in neutral space between Apoplexian and hybrid territories, symbolic of the tenuous peace established after the Incarsine Wars. Its gleaming silver-blue alloy reflected the amber nebula, creating an otherworldly glow. As they docked, Ben felt the familiar prickle of anticipation along his spine. Despite years of interplanetary peacekeeping, the weight of responsibility never diminished. His reputation alone prevented some conflicts, but others required the Omnitrix's more direct intervention. Ambassador Tennyson, a humanoid protocol droid, greeted them at the airlock. Your presence has already calmed the situation considerably. The delegates await in Chamber 7. Ben nodded. Lead the way. To Rook, he added quietly, keep communication channels open. If Ambassador Vex starts tall, king about Apoplexian superiority, again, have Grandpa Max ready with the Taurus system trade agreement details. The station's corridors bustled with diplomatic staff from dozens of worlds, sleek Galvans beside hulking Tetramans. Serpentine Serpentis diplomats negotiating with avian amphibians. The diversity that had once amazed teenage Ben now felt like home. Chamber 7's massive doors RTED to reveal a scene of controlled chaos. 17 delegates surrounded a circular table, voices raised in multiple languages despite universal translators. The Apoplexian ambassador, an imposing green humanoid in ceremonial armor, stood with claws extended, roaring at the austere hybrid representative. I will tell you one more time. Ambassador Vex thundered, slamming a massive paw on the table. Apoplexian cuisine is the most nutritionally superior in 7 sectors. Question it again and I will show you nutrition with my claws. The hybrid delegates' 4 eyes narrowed with disdain. Your primitive dietary preferences reflect your species' inability to evolve beyond base instincts. Perhaps if you consume something besides protein. Ben stepped forward before the Apoplexian could lunge. Ambassador Vex, Ambassador Domstall, I see we're having another productive cultural exchange. All 17 delegates turned, tension visibly shifting as they recognized the legendary wielder of the Omnitrix. Ben had learned that diplomatic power often came from reputation rather than actual authority, and his reputation spanned galaxies. "Ben Tennyson," rumbled Vex, claws retracting slightly. "Your timing is acceptable. I was just explaining proper respect for cultural traditions to this chlorophyll processing snob." By threatening dismemberment, the hybrid observed dryly. How enlightening. Ben moved to the center of the room, positioning himself between the hostile parties. "I understand both perspectives. Ambassador Vex, apoplexian hunting traditions date back millennia and deserve respect." The tiger-like alien nodded smugly. "And Ambassador Domstall, hybrid nutritional science has mapped genetic enhancement through diet more thoroughly than any civilization in the quadrant." The hybrid's posture relaxed marginally. "But," Ben continued, "we're here to discuss the resource-sharing protocols for the Taurus system's outer planets, not menu planning. The 17 worlds represented here have more to gain through cooperation than conflict." As Ben guided the conversation toward the scheduled diplomatic agenda, Rook stood vigilant near the door. The tension gradually dissipated as practical matters of trade routes and mining rights took precedence over wounded pride. 2 hours later, Ben had navigated the delegates through 3 contentious ISSUES with only minimal threats of interstellar warfare, a personal best for an apoplexian hybrid joint session. "We will reconvene tomorrow to finalize the Taurus Accords," Ben concluded, watching with satisfaction as adversaries who had been ready to draw blood now exchanged formal, if stiff, parting gestures. As the delegates filed out, a junior plumber officer rushed in, her expression tense. "Ambassador Tennyson, urgent transmission from Earth. Magister Tennyson requests immediate contact." Ben exchanged glances with Rook. Grandpa Max wouldn't interrupt a diplomatic session without critical cause. In the secure communication chamber, Max Tennyson's weathered face appeared on the holographic display, the command center of Plumber headquarters visible behind him. "Ben, situation developing in Undertown. Multiple temporal anomalies appearing throughout the sector. Similar reports coming in from 3 other planets. Temporal anomalies, like time ripples." Ben leaned toward the display. "Professor Paradox involved." Max's frown deepened. "That's the concerning part. We can't reach Paradox. These disturbances don't match his quantum signature. Something else is manipulating spacetime." "Coordinates?" Rook asked, already entering data into his navigational device. "Transmitting now," Max replied. "Ben, these anomalies are affecting alien populations first. Undertown is in panic. Ester has been containing the situation, but..." Ben's attention sharpened at the mention of the half-Kraho leader. "Ester's involved. Is she okay?" "Handling herself admirably," Max said with a knowing glance that made Ben shift uncomfortably. "Her people's ability to withstand extreme conditions has been valuable. She specifically requested your assistance." "We're on our way," Ben said, ignoring Rook's subtle smirk. "ETA 40 minutes if we push the engines." "Good. And Ben." Max's expression grew serious. "Whatever's happening, it's not random. These anomalies are concentrated around locations with high populations of Omnitrix cataloged species. Could be coincidence, but we don't believe in coincidences," Ben finished. "Understood. We'll report once we've assessed the situation." As the transmission ended, Ben was already moving toward the hangar. "Rook, inform the diplomatic corps we're responding to an emergency. Have them reschedule tomorrow's session." Your grandfather appeared concerned, Rook noted as they hurried through the station's corridors. "And you seemed quite alert at the mention of Ester." Ben shot his partner a warning look. "I was alert about the temporal anomalies threatening Earth." "Of course," Rook replied, his tone neutral but eyes knowing. "Your increased heart rate, pupil dilation, and vocal pitch shift were entirely about the anomalies. You know what? I liked you better before you took that human behavioral psychology course." The return journey to Earth passed in tense silence as Ben studied the preliminary data on the anomalies. Multiple reports described shimmering rifts in reality, objects aging or de-aging rapidly, and in one case, an entire Pyronite family frozen in a time loop, reliving the same 3 seconds continuously. Ben's thoughts drifted to Ester despite his efforts to focus solely on the crisis. They'd maintained a friendly relationship over the years, crossing paths during various emergencies, but the teenage romance had faded as responsibilities pulled them in different directions. She'd grown into her leadership role among the Kraho while establishing herself as a respected voice in Undertown's complex political landscape. The few times they'd worked together recently, Ben had noticed a new confidence in her movements, a sharpness in her tactical thinking that complemented her innate compassion. Entering Earth's atmosphere, Rook announced, breaking into Ben's thoughts. Plumber headquarters has cleared us for direct approach to Undertown. The cruiser descended toward Bellwood, the familiar skyline coming into view. What had once been a hidden alien enclave beneath the city had evolved into a semi-public integrated zone where humans and aliens coexisted in an uneasy but functional harmony. It had taken years of careful diplomacy and occasional heroics, but Undertown now served as Earth's model for interspecies cooperation. Today, however, that harmony had dissolved into chaos. As they approached the primary market district, Ben could see swirling vortices of golden energy puncturing reality itself. Civilians ran for cover as objects and occasionally people caught in the anomalies experienced accelerated aging. Youth regression, or temporal stasis. There, Ben pointed to a plaza where a slender figure stretched her elastic limbs to pull civilians away from a pulsating temporal rift. That's Ester. Rook brought the cruiser down in a clearing nearby, and Ben was out the hatch before the engines powered down. The Omnitrix hummed on his wrist, as if responding to the distorted time fields around them. Ben Tennyson, a Lepidopteran civilian, buzzed toward him, compound eyes wide with panic. The time bubbles. They appeared without warning. 3 of my broodlings re-trapped in slow time near the eastern fountain. We'll get them out, Ben assured him, already scanning the chaotic scene for Ester. He found her extracting a Kinesolaran child from a golden energy field. Her elasticity allowing her to reach into the distortion without fully entering it. Her magenta hair was longer than Ben remembered, pulled back in a practical braid that emphasized her angular features. The ceremonial markings of Kraho leadership adorned her exposed arms, a detail Ben hadn't noticed in their brief recent encounters. As she set the child safely aside, Ester spotted Ben approaching and straightened. A complex emotion flashing across her face before resolving into professional focus. "About time you showed up," she called, stretching her arm 20 feet to pull an elderly human away from an expanding rift. "These anomalies started appearing 2 hours ago. They're multiplying. Any pattern to their appearance?" Ben asked, noting how her voice had developed a subtle authority that commanded attention. "They're concentrating around places with diverse alien populations," Ester replied, retracting her limbs to normal proportions as she approached. Up close, Ben iced the thin scar along her jawline, knew since he'd last seen her. "The hotspot locations seem to correlate with places you've used the Omnitrix extensively in the past." Ben glanced down at the device. Grandpa Max mentioned something similar. The Omnitrix might be connected somehow. A nearby temporal bubble expanded suddenly, engulfing a food stall. Within seconds, the fresh produce aged, withered, and decayed into dust. "Theory can wait," Ester said. "We need containment now. Can you transform into something that can manipulate time?" "Clockwork maybe." Ben nodded, already turning the Omnitrix dial. Clockwork should be able to stabilize the smaller anomalies. The larger ones might need a different approach. He slammed his palm onto the activated Omnitrix, anticipating the familiar gray N flash and transformation into the Chronosapian form. Instead, searing pain shot up his arm as the device emitted a high-pitched whine unlike anything he'd experienced before. The transformation RGY engulfed him but felt wrong, too intense, too chaotic. "Ben." Ester's alarmed voice seemed distant as reality blurred around him. The pain subsided as quickly as it had come, leaving Ben disoriented but transformed, not into clockwork, but into a hybrid form he'd never accessed before. His body resembled Clockwork's mechanical structure but incorporated elements of NRG's containment suit and Atomix's nuclear power design. Chronometric gears intermeshed with radioactive cores throughout his chassis, and his vision displayed temporal analytics he'd never had access to previously. "What is this?" His voice echoed with mechanical precision and atomic energy. Ester stared, her expression shifting from concern to cautious fascination. "Ben, are you okay? You don't look like any alien I've seen you become before." Before Ben could respond, the Omnitrix symbol on his chest projected a holographic display of azimuth, not a communication, but a pre-recorded message that played automatically. "Ben Tennyson, The miniature Galvan genius addressed him. If you're seeing this message, the Omnitrix has detected a level Omega temporal crisis and initiated emergency protocol Eternity. The device is now reconfiguring to its contingency form, what I call the Eternal Omnitrix. This configuration accesses hybrid DNA combinations and previously locked transformation abilities to combat existential threats. Eternal Omnitrix. Ben examined his hybrid form with new understanding. You never mentioned this upgrade, Azimuth. The recording continued as if anticipating his question. I did not info. You of this protocol because the conditions requiring its activation are, theoretically, impossible outside of universal collapse scenarios. Something is fundamentally wrong with space-time itself. The Eternal Omnitrix will guide you through its new capabilities, but be warned. This configuration draws immense power and creates direct neural links to alien consciousness patterns previously buffered by safety protocols. Use it wisely, as the consequences of misuse could be severe. The message ended, leaving Ben in his unprecedented hybrid form, Ester staring with undisguised amazement. The temporal anomalies continuing to spread throughout Undertown. So, Ester finally said, the Omnitrix just emergency upgraded itself because reality is breaking. Typical Tuesday for Ben Tennyson. Despite the crisis, Ben found himself appreciating her ability to remain unfazed. More like a Thursday-level problem, he replied, surprised at how his hybrid voice modulated the attempt at humor. Focusing on the nearest temporal anomaly, a rift slowly engulfing a family of galvanic mechamorphs, Ben raised his hands instinctively. Knowledge flowed into his consciousness, not clockwork's innate chronokinetic understanding, but a deeper comprehension of fundamental temporal mechanics combined with atomic restructuring principles from atomics and energy containment from NRG. Golden energy flowed from his palms, surrounding the anomaly and gradually compressing it, reversing its expansion until it collapsed into a singularity point that Ben could contain within a small energy sphere. That's new, Ester observed, stretching her neck to examine the contained temporal distortion. Think you can handle the rest like that? Ben nodded, already moving toward the largest concentration of rifts. I understand what I'm doing somehow. It's like having three different aliens' knowledge but unified into something more comprehensive. Working methodically across Undertown's main plaza, Ben NTAINED 7 major anomalies and stabilized a dozen minor ones. Each success came more naturally as he adapted to the hybrid form's capabilities. Ester coordinated evacuation efforts around him, her elastic abilities allowing her to reach victims in difficult positions and pull them to safety. As Ben absorbed the final temporal distortion in the immediate area, the Eternal Omnitrix flashed, automatically shifting him back to human form. The transformation felt smoother than normal, with none of the usual disorientation. That was intense, he remarked, examining the device on his wrist. Its appearance had subtly changed, the familiar green hourglass symbol now overlaid with intricate golden patterns that shifted like liquid chronometric energy. Ester approached, concern evident as she studied his face. You okay? That looked like it took a lot out of you. I'm fine, actually. Better than fine. Ben rotated his wrist, noting how the Eternal Omnitrix moved in perfect synchronization. As if it had become more integrated with his biology. It feels different, more connected somehow. Connected enough to explain why these anomalies are targeting alien populations. Ester asked, helping a disoriented Kinesolaran to a medical station. Your grandfather sent word that similar incidents are happening on Galvan Prime, Koros, and Petropia. Ben frowned. 3 home worlds of Omnitrix aliens, plus Earth. That can't be coincidence. Magister Tennyson requested we report to Plumber headquarters once the immediate crisis was contained, Rook said, joining them after coordinating with local security forces. You two go, Ester said, straightening her utility belt. I need to check on the Kraho district. Our geothermal habitat might be destabilizing with these temporal fluctuations. I'll come with you, Ben offered quickly, then added more professionally, the Eternal Omnitrix might detect anomalies humans can't perceive. Better to have coverage in all districts. Rook's expression remained neutral, but his eyebrow raised fractionally. I will inform Magister Tennyson of our divided approach and meet you at Kraho settlement in 1 hour. As Rook departed, Ben and Ester navigated through Undertown's winding passages toward the deeper levels where the Kraho had established their colony near natural magma flows. The streets grew progressively warmer, steam venting from fissures in the rock walls. "So," Ben began awkwardly, "it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk. Outside of crisis situations, I mean." Ester glanced at him as they walked, her expression thoughtful. 3 months, 2 weeks. Not that I'm counting. That diplomatic summit on Jupiter's moon, Ben remembered. You were representing Undertown's non-human citizens. And you were falling asleep during the Jovian ambassador's 17-hour opening statement, she replied with a hint of a smile. In my defense, they speak entirely in gravitational pulses. The translator was doing its best, but still. They shared a laugh that dissolved some of the tension between them. As they descended toward the Kraho district, Ester's expression grew more serious. Your new Omnitrix form, the hybrid one. That's going to change things, isn't it? Ben considered the question, feeling the weight of the device on his wrist. Azimuth doesn't create emergency protocols for minor threats. What if ours causing these anomalies must be serious enough to warrant bypassing his usual safety measures? You didn't answer my question, Ester noted softly. Before Ben could respond, they reached the entrance to the Kraho settlement, a massive cavern where magma flows created natural hot springs and thermal vents. The heat hit Ben like a physical wall, sweat immediately beading on his forehead. For the half-Kraho Ester, however, the temperature was perfectly comfortable. I'll transform, Ben said, reaching for the eternal Omnitrix. NRG should handle this heat no problem. Wait, Ester cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. After what happened last time, maybe test it first. See what the eternal version wants to do. Ben nodded, carefully activating the device. The holographic display JECTED unfamiliar hybrid combinations alongside traditional alien forms. When he selected NRG, the display showed a modified version with heat blast integration, 27%. Looks like it's suggesting HYBR. It forms based on environmental conditions, Ben observed. Let's see what this new combo can do. The transformation felt seamless, nothing like the painful initiation when the Eternal Protocol first activated. When the green light faded, Ben found himself in a form that combined NRG's radiation containment armor with Heatblast's pyrokinetic physiology. Magma flowed through transparent conduits in the armor, and heat radiated from his body without the usual containment issues NRG experienced. Whoa, he said, examining his new form. I have NRG's radiation immunity but Heatblast's heat generation. And I'm not cooking in a suit that's designed to keep energy in. Ester studied him with professional interest. Efficient adaptation. Your new Omnitrix is combining DNA for optimal functionality rather than just raw power. They proceeded into the Kraho settlement, where dozens of the heat-loving aliens moved about their daily activities in the extreme temperature. Many recognized Ester immediately, approaching with respectful gestures before addressing her with community concerns. Ben observed how naturally she handled each interaction, resolving disputes, offering guidance, making quick decisions that satisfied multiple parties. This was a side of Ester he'd rarely witnessed, the confident leader who had earned her people's trust through consistent, thoughtful action. The thermal regulators are fluctuating in the southern chambers, an elderly Kraho informed her, pointing toward a distant tunnel. Sekulo believes it may be related to the time disturbances above. We'll check it out, Ester assured him. Then turned to Ben. The southern chambers house our youngest and oldest community members. If temporal anomalies are affecting the magma flows there, lead the way, Ben said. The hybrid form's voice resonating with both NRG's mechanical quality and Heatblast's crackling undertones. As they traversed deeper into the settlement, the heat intensified even further. No, RMAL humans would have perished instantly, but Ben's combined form handled the environment perfectly. They passed through chambers where Kraho children played in magma pools like human children might play in water. Their elongated limbs stretching playfully. They seemed so normal, Ben observed. Despite living in conditions that would kill most species instantly. Ester glanced at him curiously. What makes something normal, Ben? Temperature preference, biology, cultural practices. Working with the plumbers must have shown you how relative normal really is. Fair point, Ben conceded. I guess I meant peaceful content. Despite everything happening above, we've worked hard for that peace, Ester replied, a hint of pride in her voice. After years of being nomads, pursued across worlds for our abilities are treated as threats because of our heat requirements, having a stable community means everything. They reached the southern chambers where the heat grew even more extreme, roaching the temperature of the sun's surface. Here, even Ben's hybrid form registered discomfort, internal cooling systems working overtime. There, Ester pointed toward a pulsing golden light at the chamber's far end. Another anomaly. Quote, unlike the rifts in Undertown above, this distortion appeared more stable, almost structured. As they approached cautiously, Ben could see it wasn't randomly affecting its surroundings but rather seemed to be observing. That doesn't look like the others, he said, raising a hand to analyze it with his form's radiation detection abilities. It's not chaotic, it's purposeful. The anomaly pulsed as if responding to his presence. Within its golden energy, Ben glimpsed shifting images, alien worlds, ancient civilizations, and repeatedly, different are scions of the Omnitrix throughout its evolutionary development. Ben, Ester said quietly, I think it's watching you specifically. Before Ben could respond, the anomaly expanded suddenly, engulfing them both in golden light. Pain lanced through Ben's consciousness as the eternal Omnitrix reacted violently, emitting a high-pitched whine that echoed through the chamber. Images flooded his mind. A massive being composed of temporal energy, ancient temples dedicated to time manipulation, a weapon designed to harvest Omnitrix energy, civilizations rising and falling in seconds. And through it all, a name repeating like a mantra, Chronos. The vision ended as abruptly as it began, the anomaly collapsing into nothingness. Ben staggered, automatically reverting to human form as the eternal Omnitrix recalibrated itself. Ester caught him before he could fall, her elastic arms supporting his weight effortlessly. Ben, what happened? You went rigid and the Omnitrix started glowing like crazy. I saw something, Ben managed. His voice hoarse. An entity called Chronos. I think it's behind the anomalies. It's searching for something related to the Omnitrix. That would explain why the disruptions center around places you've used it frequently, Ester reasoned, helping him stand upright. But what does a temporal being want with transformation technology? Ben shook his head, the vision's details already fading like a dream. Not the transformation function, something deeper. Something about the fundamental energy the Omnitrix uses to rewrite DNA temporarily. The eternal Omnitrix beeped, its holographic interface activating spontaneously to display a galactic map with 4 pulsing points: Earth, Galvan Prime, Koros, and Petropia. Those are the planets Grandpa Max mentioned, Ben noted. All experiencing temporal anomalies. Ester studied the display with narrowed eyes. They form a perfect tetrahedron in space. That's not natural positioning. No, Ben agreed grimly. That's a containment pattern. Whatever Chronos is planning, these 4 worlds are key points in some kind of massive dimensional working. Their discussion was interrupted by Ben's communicator signaling an incoming transmission. Rook's face appeared, his normally composed expression tense. Ben, we have received a formal diplomatic request from Princess Looma Red Wind of Koros. She demands your immediate presence regarding the temporal disruptions affecting Tetraman territories. Specifically, she claims the anomalies are, quote, clearly Tennyson's fault as usual, and has invoked Article 7 of the Interspecies Emergency Protocol. Quote, Ben winced. Article 7, that's the responsible party must participate in resolution clause. Indeed, Rook confirmed. A plumber cruiser has been dispatched to transport you to Koros immediately. Magister Tennyson has approved the mission, classifying it as directly related to our investigation of the temporal phenomena. Great, Ben muttered. Gee, what I needed. A reunion with my ex-fiancé while reality is breaking down. Ester raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. Ex-fiancé. You never mentioned that part of your history with the Tetramans. It was a cultural misunderstanding, Ben explained hastily. I beat her in combat when I was 15, which apparently counted as a marriage proposal in Tetraman culture. We sorted it out eventually, but Luma's still sensitive about the whole thing. Sensitive, Rook interjected through the communicator. May I remind you that her last correspondence referred to you as the Disho, Norable shape-shifter whose spine will adorn my royal chambers. See progress. Ben replied with forced cheerfulness. Last year it was dishonorable shape-shifter whose entrails will decorate my battle arena. Ester shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips despite the gravity of the situation. And now you're heading to her homeworld during a crisis. I'm sure that will go smoothly. The cruiser will arrive in 20 minutes, Rook continued. I will meet you at the surface access point. As the communication ended, Ben turned to Ester, suddenly reluctant to leave. I should help. Finish securing the Kraho settlement first. We can handle things here, she assured him. If these anomalies are connected across planets, resolving the situation on Koros could stabilize all affected worlds. Come with me, Ben suggested abruptly. When Ester looked surprised, he continued, your diplomatic experience would be valuable dealing with the Tetramans. And you've handled temporal anomalies firsthand now. Attempting to buffer Princess Looma's notorious temper, she asked with a knowing look. Tactical deployment of reasonable people, Ben countered. Also, your heat resistance would be useful on Koros. The desert regions reach temperatures almost as extreme as this settlement. Ester considered for a moment, then nodded decisively. My people are stable for now, and this threat affects all worlds. As Undertown's representative, I should be involved in interplanetary crisis response anyway. Great, I mean, that's a logical decision, Ben amended, trying to maintain professional composure despite his obvious relief. They made their way back through the Kraho settlement, Ester briefly conferring with her second-in-command about settlement management during her absence. The easy authority with which she delegated responsibilities impressed Ben, another reminder of how much she'd grown from the impulsive girl he'd known years ago. As they approached the surface access point, Rook waited beside a plumber transport vehicle, equipment cases already loaded. I have prepared standard environmental gear for Koros, he informed them. The latest reports indicate temporal anomalies have intensified in the royal district of Tetraman capital. Any casualties? Ben asked, climbing aboard. None reported yet, but property damage is extensive. The Tetraman Royal Palace has experienced significant architectural regression, apparently reverting to its design from 3 centuries ago overnight. The transport ascended rapidly through access tunnels, emerging into late afternoon sunlight. In the distance, a sleek plumber cruiser descended toward the rendezvous point, its engines humming with efficiency. Fastest available transport, Rook noted. We should reach Koros within 4 hours using the new hyperspace corridors. As they boarded the cruiser, Ben's thoughts turned to Princess Looma Red Wind. Their last encounter 2 years ago had been tense but not openly hostile, a diplomatic function where they'd maintained professional distance. Now, with the eternal Omnitrix activating and temporal anomalies threatening multiple worlds, reconnecting with the volatile Tetraman princess seemed particularly ill-timed. Once aboard, Ben studied the eternal Omnitrix more carefully while Rook handled flight preparations. The device's new appearance featured subtle chronometric elements, with golden energy occasionally flowing beneath its surface like liquid time itself. That's definitely not Azimuth's standard design, Ester observed, taking the seat beside him. The energy pattern reminds me of the temporal anomalies. Which raises the question, did the anomalies trigger the eternal protocol, or did something else cause both? Ben turned the device gently, noting how it seemed more responsive to his movements. The cruiser launched smoothly, accelerating through Earth's atmosphere toward open space. Within minutes, they had cleared the gravitat-ional field and prepared for hyperspace transition. Coordinates locked for Koros, announced the navigation system. Hyperspace entry in 10 seconds. The stars stretched around them as the cruiser entered the dimensional corridor, reality blurring into streaks of light. Ben leaned back, preparing for the 4-hour journey, when a violent shudder ran through the ship. Spatial distortion detected, the automated system warned. Hyperspace corridor integrity compromised. Rook's hands flew over the controls. Something is interfering with the hyperspace matrix. Attempting to compensate. The viewscreen showed their hyperspace tunnel fracturing, golden energy, identical to the temporal anomalies, bleeding through the ruptures. The eternal Omnitrix responded immediately, pulsing with matching energy that spread up Ben's arm. It's happening again, he warned, feeling knowledge flooding his consciousness. The Omnitrix is connecting to something. Before anyone could respond, the hyperspace corridor collapsed completely, replaced by a swirling vortex of golden temporal energy. The cruiser tumbled helplessly through distorted space-time, alarms blaring as systems failed. Emergency protocols engaging. Rook called over the chaos. Brace for. His voice cut off as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The eternal Omnitrix flared brilliantly, enveloping Ben in transformation energy without his activation. When his vision cleared, he found himself in a new hybrid form combining XLR-8's speed capabilities with Gravitax's gravitational manipulation, perfectly suited for stabilizing their trajectory through distorted space. Acting instinctively, Ben extended his hands, generating a gravitational field that surrounded the spinning cruiser. With precise adjustments, he countered the chaotic forces tearing at their vessel, gradually bringing their tumble under control. Navigation is non-functional, Rook reported, fighting with unresponsive controls. We have no way to determine our position or trajectory. The viewport showed only swirling golden energy punctuated by glimpses of unfamiliar star patterns and planetary bodies as they flashed past at impossible speeds. Air moving through space and time simultaneously, Ben realized, the hybrid form providing understanding beyond his human comprehension. These aren't random jumps, we're being pulled along a specific pathway. Pulled by what? Ester asked, securing herself to her seat as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Before Ben could answer, the chaotic tunnel around them suddenly stabilized, resolving into a direct pathway through the golden energy. Ahead, a massive planetary body came into view, the rust-red surface of Koros, but with continents configured differently than modern maps showed. That's Koros, Rook confirmed, checking the functioning sensors. But according to geological patterns, approximately 3,000 years in the past. No, Ben corrected, his hybrid form perceiving subtle energy patterns. It's present-day Koros, but experiencing a massive temporal regression field. The entire planet is shifting backward through its own timeline. As they approached the atmosphere, the eternal Omnitrix pulsed again. Ben felt it communicating information directly to his consciousness. Coordinates for a specific location on the planet's surface, a measurement of chronometric distortion, and most disturbingly, a name, Temple of Chronos. I know where we need to go, Ben announced, using gravitational manipulation to stabilize their descent path. The source of the temporal disruption is centered on an ancient structure in the southern hemisphere. The Royal House of Red Wind Territory, Rook noted. Princess Looma's ancestral lands. Of course it is, Ben muttered. Because this situation needed additional complications. The cruiser broke through the upper atmosphere, fire streaming past the viewports as Rook fought for control. Despite Ben's gravitational assistance, their descent was steeper than optimal, the ship groaning under stress it wasn't designed to withstand. Prepare for rough landing, Rook warned as the barren landscape of Koros rushed toward them. Ben extended his powers to maximum, creating a gravitational cushion that slowed their descent moments before impact. The cruiser still hit hard, skidding across red sand dunes before coming to rest at the base of a massive mesa. Silence fell as systems powered down automatically, emergency lights casting an eerie glow throughout the cabin. Ben reverted to human form, the eternal Omnitrix humming softly on his wrist. Everyone okay? He asked, checking Ester and Rook for injuries. Functional, Rook responded, already assessing damage reports. The cruiser, however, will not be returning to space without significant repairs. Ester moved to the viewport, staring out at the alien landscape. I'm fine, but, look at that. Ben joined her, eyes widening at the sight. The sky above, Koros pulsed with massive temporal distortions, reality itself seeming to fold and unfold in complex patterns. Across the horizon, massive structures shifted between ancient glory and modern development, caught in chronological flux. The entire planet is unstable, Ben observed. Time isn't flowing linearly here anymore. As if in response to his assessment, the eternal Omnitrix projected a holographic map of their surroundings, highlighting a path leading from their position toward a massive structure partially embedded in the mesa face, a temple complex of distinctly non-Tetraman design. Quote, that architecture predates Tetraman civilization, Rook noted, studying the projection. According to archaeological records, Koros was visited by chronivore entities approximately 15,000 years ago. Though most evidence of their presence was destroyed during the First Tetraman Unification War. Chronivores? Ester asked. As in, creatures that consume time. Theoretical entities that feed on chronological energy. Rook explained. Most scientific authorities considered them mythological until Professor Paradox confirmed their historical existence during the Chronosapian Rebellion of. A massive explosion cut off further explanation, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Through the viewport, they saw a plume of dust rising from the direction of the ancient temple. The Su-nd of energy weapons and battle cries carried across the desert. Looks like someone beat us to the temple, Ben observed grimly. Multiple someones, Ester corrected, her elastic neck extending for a better view. I count at least 30 Tetraman warriors in formation. And leading them. Let me guess, Ben sighed. Princess Looma Red Wind, looking to add my spine to her decoration collection. Actually, Ester replied with a hint of surprise, she appears to be fighting against another force. Energy signatures unlike anything I've seen before. Ben activated the external sensors, magnifying the distant battle scene. Princess Looma indeed led a contingent of Tetraman royal guards, her distinctive armor gleaming in the harsh sunlight as she battled against humanoid figures composed of shifting golden energy, temporal constructs similar to the anomalies they'd encountered on Earth. She's defending the temple entrance, Ben realized. Those constructs are trying to breach it. The cruiser's weapons are offline. Rook reported, but personal equipment remains functional. Ben nodded decisively. Then we join the fight. Whatever's in that temple is connected to these anomalies and the eternal Omnitrix. And right now, Luma's forces are buying us time to figure it out. Approaching a Tetraman royal battle without formal invitation is considered a serious breach of protocol, Rook cautioned. Then we'll just have to hope saving them from temporal monsters counts as a reasonable exception, Ben replied, activating the eternal Omnitrix. Time to see what this new upgrade can really do. The device displayed a hybrid combination suggestion. 4 arms with diamond head integration. Ben accepted, and the transformation enveloped him in familiar green energy. When it faded, he stood in a form that combined Tetraman physical strength with Petrosapian crystalline armor and weapon-generating abilities, perfectly suited for both heavy combat and defending against energy-based attacks. Impressive adaptation, Ester noted, stretching her limbs in preparation for battle. The Omnitrix is selecting optimal combinations for each situation. Let's hope it's enough, Ben replied, his hybrid voice resonating with both 4 arms' depth and Diamond Head's crystalline timbre. Because we're about to introduce ourselves to royalty. As they emerged from the damaged cruiser into the harsh corrosion desert, the battle at the temple entrance intensified. Princess Looma stood defiant against waves of temporal constructs, her 4 arms wielding traditional Tetraman battle hammers with devastating effect. Yet for each construct she shattered, 2 more formed from the swirling anomalies surrounding the ancient structure. Ben exchanged determined looks with his companions BEF, or charging forward across the red sands toward the embattled princess, and whatever secrets awaited them within the Temple of Kronos. Chapter 2. Fractured Dimensions. Sand whipped across the crimson plains of Koros as Ben charged forward in his crystalline Tetraman hybrid form. Each footfall left fractured impressions in the desert floor, power rippling through his transformed musculature. Beside him, Ester's elastic limbs stretched and contracted in rhythmic bounds while Rook maintained a steady pace, prototool configured for long-range support. The battlefield before them undulated with golden temporal energy. Princess Looma Red Wind stood at its center, a hurricane of calculated violence. Her 4 arms worked in perfect synchronization, each movement honed through lifetimes of warrior tradition. Blood trickled from a gash above her left eyes, yet her expression remained unflinching determination. Tetramans. Third formation. Her commanding voice carried across the din of battle. Immediately, her warriors reconfigured their positions, creating interlocking defensive perimeters. The temporal constructs attacking them shimmered and shifted, humanoid one moment, then fracturing into geometrically impossible configurations the next. Their touch left age-warped depressions in the ancient temple stone. Rook, suppression fire on the left flank, Ben called. Ester, right side support. I'll take center with Looma. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Ben launched himself forward, crystalline protrusions erupting from his forearms to form jagged blades. The first temporal construct disintegrated under his attack, dissolving into particles of golden light that quickly reformed several meters away. They regenerate, Ben warned, adapting his strategy immediately. Focus on containment, not destruction. Looma registered his presence with a momentary widening of her four eyes, battle rhythm faltering for precisely 1/4 second before resuming with redoubled ferocity. Tennyson. Her voice carried complex emotional harmonics that Tetraman vocal physiology permitted, equal measure surprise, irritation, and reluctant relief. Your timing remains consistently inconvenient. Nice to see you too, Princess. Ben generated crystalline barriers to momentarily contain 3 constructs. Looks like you started the party without us. This is no celebration. She shed through a temporal entity with practiced precision. These abominations appeared with the golden storms. They seek entry to the ancestral temple, sacred ground no outsider may tread. A construct materialized directly behind Looma. Before Ben could shout warning, Ester's elongated arm snapped forward, wrapping around the entity and hurling it into a cluster of its companions. Looma's gaze flickered toward Ester, assessing. You brought the Kraho leader. Ambassador Ester of Earth's Undertown, Ben corrected, generating crystal shards that temporarily disrupted the reforming patterns of several constructs. She's experienced with these anomalies. The princess acknowledged this with a curt nod before returning to battle. Her fighting style had evolved since their last encounter, more disciplined. Less reliant on raw strength and more on tactical efficiency. The transformation from the impulsive young warrior who had once claimed Ben as her fiancé was striking. Rook's precision fire created a perimeter that momentarily pushed back the swarm of constructs. In the brief respite, he approached the others, prototool reconfiguring to scanner mode. These entities emit chronometric radiation consistent with the anomalies on Earth, he reported. However, the patterns suggest they are projections rather than independent beings, extensions of a central consciousness. The temple. Ester pointed toward the ancient structure partly embedded in the mesa. Intricate symbols adorned its stone facade, pulsing with the same golden energy as the constructs. They're not attacking it, they're defending it. Realization dawned in Ben's hybrid consciousness. They're not trying to get in, they're trying to keep us out. A deafening crack split the air as a massive temporal rift opened directly above the temple entrance. The constructs immediately abandoned their attack patterns, flowing like liquid light toward the new distortion. They're retreating, Looma observed, suspicion evident in her voice. Cowards fear Tetraman's strength. Or they've accomplished their purpose, Ben countered, watching as the entities vanished into the rift. Creating a diversion. The ground beneath them trembled violently. Ancient stonework began shifting, the temple entrance reconfiguring itself as if being rapidly redesigned by invisible hands. Symbols carved into the archway flared with blinding intensity. Chronometric reconfiguration accelerating, Rook announced, scanner beeping urgently. The structure is cycling through multiple timelines simultaneously. Everyone back, Ben shouted, generating a crystalline shield wall between their group and the increasingly unstable temple. The warning came moments too late. With a sound like reality tearing, the temple entrance exploded outward in a wave of golden energy. Ben's shield shattered upon impact, the backlash sending everyone sprawling across the desert floor. The eternal Omnitrix flared in response, automatically reverting Ben to human form as if protecting itself from the temporal surge. When the dust settled, the temple entrance had transformed completely. Where weathered stone had stood for millennia, an archway of pulsing chronometric energy now framed a swirling vortex, a portal to somewhere else. Or somewhere else. Ben staggered to his feet, the eternal Omnitrix humming with unusual resonance patterns on his wrist. Its display cycled through alien forms without his input, as if searching for something. Is everyone all right? He called out, spotting his companions recovering at various distances. Ester pulled herself upright, elastic limbs contracting to normal proportions. Intact, but that was no ordinary explosion. I experienced multiple time streams simultaneously for 2.7 seconds. 17 distinct temporal possibilities, Rook confirmed, checking his damaged scanner. Most involving significantly different evolutionary outcomes for this sector. Looma rose last, her substantial frame showing little damage beyond superficial scrapes. Her expression, however, revealed deeper concern than physical injury would warrant. The sacred temple of ancestors. Her voice carried uncharacteristic reverence. My people have guarded this site for 17 generations without understanding its purpose. The elders speak of beings who walked between moments like we walk between rooms. Ben approached the transformed entrance cautiously. The eternal Omnitrix's reaction intensified with each step, its glow synchronizing with the portal's pulsations. It recognizes this technology, he realized aloud. Or whoever created it. Ben Tennyson. Looma's authoritative tone halted his advance. As Crown Princess of the Royal House of Redwind and protector of the ancestral relics, I forbid further approach. This temple falls under Tetraman jurisdiction. Ben turned to face her, noting the subtle changes in her appearance since their last meeting. Her traditional battle armor now bore the distinguished markings of true combat experience rather than merely ceremonial symbols. A new scar traced her jawline, and her lower left arm showed evidence of a recently healed fracture. Time had tempered her impulsiveness without diminishing her formidable presence. Princess Looma, he responded carefully, these temporal anomalies aren't isolated to Koros. Earth, Galvan Prime, Petropia, all experiencing the same phenomena. They're connected to this temple and somehow linked to my Omnitrix. He raised his wrist, showing the transformed device with its new chronometric elements. Looma's eyes narrowed in recognition. The great timepiece, she murmured. Our ancestral texts speak of a device that bridges all life across all moments. We believed it mythological. The Omnitrix was never designed for temporal manipulation. Ben explained. But it's evolved, calling itself the Eternal Omnitrix now. Something about these anomalies triggered an emergency protocol. Rook joined them, Proto-Tool scanning the portal. The energy signature matches fragments discovered in ancient Galvan archives, theoretical work on pan-dimensional travel that predates even first thinker Azimuth's earliest research. Someone's been manipulating time across multiple planets, Ester added, approaching cautiously. Creating a pattern with worlds connected to the Omnitrix. Looma considered this information, interna. Conflict evident as duty warred with pragmatism. Finally, she reached a decision with characteristic Tetraman directness. The ancient texts state, when the great timepiece returns, the guardian must allow passage to its bearer. It seems you are this bearer, Tennyson. Her forearms crossed in formal declaration. I will permit your investigation, but I accompany you. The honor of 17 generations of guardians demands it. Ben recognized the significance of her concession. We welcome your expertise, Princess. And strength, she added pointedly. These temporal aberrations proved resistant to conventional attacks. My people's battle techniques may prove necessary for your survival. The subtle emphasis on your highlighted the Tetraman princess's continued belief in her species' superior combat prowess, a cultural certainty Ben had learned was unwise to challenge directly. The portal appears stable for the moment, Rook reported. However, I cannot determine its destination with available equipment. Ben studied the swirling vortex, the eternal Omnitrix's glow intensifying as he stepped closer. I think it wants me to go through. It's been guiding us since these anomalies started. That's not ominous at all, Ester remarked dryly. Following the mysterious directions of an unexplained Omnitrix upgrade toward an unknown destination through a temporal portal. Tuesday. Day-level problem upgrading to Friday territory, Ben replied with a grim smile, referencing their earlier classification system. Looma looked between them with momentary confusion before dismissing the exchange as irrelevant. My royal guards will maintain perimeter defense. Should we not return within one planetary rotation, they are instructed to seal this site permanently. That's not particularly reassuring, Ben noted. It is not meant to be. Looma's expression remained impassive. It is Tetraman protocol for potential extinction-level events, which this could become if these temporal disruptions continue spreading. Rook concluded, I will establish communication relays before we proceed. If possible, we should maintain contact with Plumber headquarters. As Rook prepared the necessary equipment, Ben found himself momentarily alone with Ester and Looma, an awkward triangle of unresolved history and present tension. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Ester broke it with characteristic directness. So, Princess Looma, Ben mentioned you two have history. Something about spines decorating royal chambers. Looma's upper right eye twitched, the Tetraman equivalent of surprised amusement. Tennyson defeated me in honorable combat when we were adolescents, unwittingly claiming betrothal rights under Tetraman law. When he later rejected the union in favor of a human mate. Traditional protocol demanded his ceremonial dismemberment, which we eventually worked through, Ben added hastily. Cultural misunderstanding, diplomatic immunity, that whole thing. Indeed, Looma's tone carried complex undertones. Time and greater responsibilities provided perspective. Tetraman royal duties require alliances built on strength and honor, not merely tradition. Ester nodded thoughtfully. Leadership does change how we view personal relationships. The needs of our people come first. Something passed between the two women, a moment of mutual recognition despite their dramatically different cultures and physiologies. Ben felt simultaneously excluded from and central to this silent exchange. Rook returned before the moment could develop further. Communications established, though signal degradation through temporal distortions will likely be significant. Then we proceed. Looma drew herself to full height, adjusting her armor with practiced efficiency. I will lead, as is proper for the Guardian. Actually, Ben interrupted, indicating the now glowing Eternal Omnitrix, I think I need to go first. The device seems to be reacting to the portal, it might stabilize our transition. The princess considered this, then nodded curtly. Logical. You proceed first, then I follow, with your companions behind to guard our retreat path. Without waiting for further discussion, Ben approached the swirling vortex. The Eternal Omnitrix's glow intensified with each step until it matched the portal's golden radiance perfectly. Taking a deep breath, he stepped through the threshold. Sensation fractured. Ben experienced the disorienting feeling of existing in multiple states simultaneously, falling, standing, flying, swimming through spaces that were both infinitely vast and microscopically confined. The Eternal Omnitrix burned against his skin, somehow anchoring his consciousness to a singular identity despite the dimensional chaos. Then, abruptly, solidity returned. Ben stumbled forward onto smooth crystalline ground, momentarily disoriented. Behind him, Looma emerged from the portal with characteristic Tetraman steadiness, followed shortly by Ester and Rook. Petropia. Rook identified their location immediately. Or a variation thereof. They stood on a vast crystalline plane that stretched toward a horizon dominated by geometric formations. The sky above shimmered with aurora-like energies rather than Petropia's known atmospheric composition. Most striking were the massive floating crystals suspended at various heights, some small as buildings, others large as mountains, all pulsing with internal light. This cannot be contemporary Petropia, Looma observed, studying their surroundings with tactical precision. The planetary reconstruct, ion following Tetrax's restoration did not include these aerial formations. Ben activated the Eternal Omnitrix's scanner function, watching as it analyzed their environment. Its reading is authentic Petrosapian crystal composition. But the molecular structure is different. More complex. Look, Ester pointed toward what appeared to be a settlement in the distance, crystalline spires arranged in concentric patterns around a central structure that pulsed with familiar golden energy. Another temple, similar architectural patterns to the Koro's site, Rook confirmed, and exhibiting the same chronometric radiation signature. Ben studied the display on the Eternal Omnitrix, which now projected a directional indicator pointing toward the settlement. The Omnitrix wants us to go there. I think these temples are connected, nodes in some kind of temporal network. Then we proceed with caution, Looma declared, already moving forward with confident strides. This crystalline terrain favors defensive positioning. We maintain formation, alert for. She stopped abruptly as a flash of movement caught their attention. Approximately 50 meters distant, a figure darted between crystal formations. Humanoid but moving with impossible speed. Kinesolaran, Rook suggested, prototool raised. No, Ben replied, the Eternal Omnitrix flaring in recognition. Something else. The figure halted suddenly, now clearly visible. Female, humanoid in general form but with distinct Petrosapian features. Her skin contained crystalline elements that caught the strange light, and her movement RNS suggested enhanced physical capabilities beyond standard Petrosapian parameters. Most strikingly, she wore what appeared to be a modified plumber uniform, but the insignia was unfamiliar, more advanced than current designs. Halt! The figure called out, her voice carrying crystalline harmonics. You're trespassing in a level 9 chronometric exclusion zone. Identify immediately. Before anyone could respond, her eyes widened in recognition. Ben Tennyson. But that's... She checked a device on her wrist. Temporal displacement detected. You're out of timeline visitors. We came through a portal on Koros, Ben explained. Stepping forward cautiously. Who are you? And, when are we? The stranger approached, her movements displaying trained caution. As she drew nearer, Ben noticed something familiar about her features, the way she carried herself, certain facial expressions. I'm Omnitrix Prototype EPSILON5, Specialized Temporal Division, she introduced herself formally. But you knew me as Eunice. Shock registered on Ben's face. Eunice. But you look different, she finished for him. I know. Synthetic evolutionary adaptation. But more importantly, you shouldn't be here. None of you should. Her gaze swept over the group, lingering momentarily on Looma with an expression Ben couldn't interpret. Where exactly is here? Ester asked. This doesn't match any Petropia in our records. Because it doesn't exist in your timeline, Eunice explained. You're approximately 300 years forward from your reference point, in a potential future that may or may not manifest in your reality stream. A possible future, Rook clarified. Not necessarily our future. Correct. The multiverse theorem proved accurate. Every significant decision point creates branch realities. Eunice gestured toward the settlement. This is the Petrosapian evolutionary apex in timeline designation Gamma 16. One of many possible outcomes. And those temples we've been finding? Ben asked, indicating the central structure. The golden energy, the temporal anomalies. Eunice's expression grew serious. Chronal convergence nodes. They're manifestations of Chronos attempting to establish cross-temporal dominance. Chronos. The name resonated with Ben's earlier vision. The temporal entity behind the anomalies. Not exactly an entity, Eunice corrected. More accurately, Chronos I. S.A. pan-dimensional intelligence evolved from what was once an organic being. It exists simultaneously across all timelines, perceiving time as we perceive space. She gestured for them to follow, leading them toward a smaller crystal formation that provided cover from the settlement's direct line of sight. I don't have authorization to bring non-temporal agents into the settlement, she explained. But we need to talk before the chronal enforcers detect your presence. Once sheltered, Eunice activated a device that created a shimmering field around their position. Temporal isolation bubble buys us a few minutes outside normal detection. You know about Chronos, Ben prompted. And these temples, they're connected to the Omnitrix somehow. Not just connected. Eunice's gaze fixed on the modified device on Ben's wrist. The Eternal Protocol has activated in your timeline. That's concerning. In most reference timelines, that protocol doesn't trigger for another century. What exactly is this Eternal Omnitrix? Ester asked. Ben's device transformed during our encounter with the first temporal anomaly. Eunice studied the device carefully. The Eternal Omnitrix represents AZM. UTH's contingency design. A configuration capable of manipulating genetic code across temporal dimensions, not just physical space. It's powerful enough to rewrite evolutionary history if fully activated. Why would Azimuth create such a dangerous capability? Rook asked, his tone reflecting professional concern. Because he foresaw Chronos, Eunice replied simply. Or something like it. The Omnitrix was never just a transformation tool, it was a preservation system for all sentient DNA across the universe. The Eternal Protocol extends that preservation across time itself. Looma, who had been silently assessing their surroundings with tactical precision, finally spoke. These revelations explain the Tetraman ancestral texts. Our people were not merely guarding a temple, we were containing a temporal incursion point. Exactly, Eunice confirmed. Chronos requires specific locations where reality's fabric is naturally thinner to manifest its influence across multiple timelines. Your ants. Stores were chosen as guardians because Tetraman genetic stability makes you resistant to temporal manipulation. Ben examined the Eternal Omnitrix, its golden patterns shifting with newfound significance. So when Azimuth created this protocol, he was building a defense against Chronos specifically. Not initially, Eunice clarified. The Eternal Protocol was designed as a last resort against extinction-level threats to all sentient life. But as Chronos began manifesting across timelines, Azimuth adapted the protocol to counter temporal interference specifically. You speak of this Azimuth as if you know him personally. Looma observed shrewdly. Yet you claim to be from 3 centuries hence. A shadow crossed Eunice's expression. Time becomes fluid when you work in temporal division. I've encountered 17 different versions of Azimuth across various timelines. She turned to Ben directly. The Azimuth of your timeline recognized Chronos' emergence pattern before anyone else. The temporal anomalies you're experiencing represent Chronos testing reality's boundaries, searching for access points to fully manifest. And what happens if it succeeds? Ben asked, though he suspected the answer. Chronometric cascade failure. Reality collapses as conflicting timestreams attempt to occupy the same dimensional space. Eunice's expression grew grim. I've witnessed 3 timelines erased completely. Billions of lives, entire evolutionary histories, gone in an instant. The gravity of her statement settled over the group. Ben felt the weight of responsibility intensify, the eternal Omnitrix seeming heavier on his wrist. How do we stop it? He asked simply. That's the problem, Eunice replied. Conventional methods can't affect Chronos directly because it exists outside normal temporal flow. The only way to counter it is to stabilize the convergence nodes, the temples, simultaneously across all affected timelines. Which is why we're being pulled from one to another, Ester reasoned. The Omnitrix is guiding Ben to each node. Eunice nodded. The eternal Omnitrix is the only device capable of rewriting temporal code at a fundamental level. Each node you stabilize strengthens reality's resistance to Chronos' influence. A sudden alarm from Eunice's wrist device interrupted their conversation. Temporal enforcement detected approaching. Our isolation bubble won't hold much longer. We need to reach the convergence node here, Ben decided. If stabilizing it helps prevent reality collapse, that's our priority. I'll help you, Eunice offered immediately. My access codes should get us past the outer security perimeter. Beyond that, she glanced at her wrist device again. We'll improvise. A specialty of Tennyson's, Looma remarked with what might have been the Tetraman equivalent of dry humor. As Eunice deactivated the isolation field, Ben activated the Eternal Omnitrix. We'll need speed and stealth to reach the settlement undetected. The device displayed a hybrid combination, XLR-8 with Ghostfreak integration. Ben accepted, transformation energy washing over him. The resulting form combined Kinesolaran velocity with Ectonorite intangibility, perfect for rapid, undetected movement. Fascinating adaptation, Eunice observed with scientific interest. True hybrid forms were theoretical in most of my reference timelines. The eternal protocol enables genetic combination at quantum levels, Ben explained, his voice carrying both XLR-8's accelerated cadence and Ghostfreak's ethereal qualities. I'll scout ahead, create distractions if needed. Unnecessary risk, Looma objected immediately. We maintain group integrity in unknown territory. The princess is right, Eunice agreed. Chronal enforcers can detect temporal anomalies, which you currently register as. Together we have better odds of reaching the node. Ben conceded the point with a nod. Then we move together, fast and quiet. They proceeded toward the settlement in tight formation, using crystal formations for cover. Eunice led with practiced efficiency, her movements suggesting extensive field experience beyond the somewhat naive assistant Ben had once known. Transformation was stark, from synthetic human designed as an Omnitrix prototype to confident temporal agent with evident combat experience. As they approached the settlement perimeter, Eunice halted the group with a raised hand. Security checkpoint ahead. Chronometric scanners will detect your temporal displacement. Ben focused his hybrid form's abilities, extending intangibility to the entire group. I can phase us through for approximately 17 seconds before molecular cohesion becomes unstable. Sufficient, Eunice confirmed, checking her equipment. On my mark, now. The sensat ion of phasing through physical matter while moving at accelerated speed created a unique disorientation for those experiencing it for the first time. Ester adapted quickly, her elastic physiology naturally compatible with the state transition. Rook maintained composed stoicism despite evident discomfort. Looma, surprisingly, showed no reaction whatsoever, Tetraman physiology apparently resistant even to this unusual experience. They passed through the crystalline security barrier undetected, rematerializing in a narrow corridor between geometric structures. Ben reverted to normal tangibility, but maintained the hybrid form's speed capabilities. The node is located beneath the central spire, Eunice informed them, indicating a massive crystal formation that towered above the settlement. You'll need to access the subterranean chambers through the primary research facility. Which will be guarded, Rook surmised. Extensively, Eunice confirmed, but I have limited access privileges as a temporal division agent. If we move during shift rotation, we might. A piercing alarm cut through the air, crystalline structures throughout the settlement pulsing with warning light patterns. That's not good, Ben observed unnecessarily. Eunice checked her wrist device, expression darkening. Perimeter breach detected, but not us. Something else entered the exclusion zone. She looked up, eyes widening. Multiple temporal signatures approaching from Vector 7. They followed her gaze to see shimmering distortions appearing throughout the settlement, the same golden energy constructs they had encountered on Koros. But more substantial in this environment, more defined. Chronos is manifesting combat extensions, Eunice explained, drawing what appeared to be an advanced energy weapon. It's making a direct attempt to seize the convergence node. As if confirming her assessment, the constructs began converging on the central spire, overwhelming the settlement's defenders with superior numbers. Change of plans, Ben decided. Direct approach. Before anyone could object, he accelerated toward the central spire, phasing through smaller structures to maintain a direct path. The others followed as best they could, Ester using elastic momentum to keep pace, Looma leaping with Tetraman's strength, Rook and Eunice employing advanced tech to maintain formation. As they approached the spire's base, Ben encountered the first wave of temporal constructs. His hybrid form's phasing ability allowed him to pass through their energy composition, but physical attacks proved ineffective against their non-standard matter. Conventional weapons are useless, Eunice called out, her specialized weapon creating temporary disruptions but no permanent damage. They exist partially outside our timeline. The eternal Omnitrix flashed in response, suggesting a transformation shift. Ben accepted, immediately transforming into a new hybrid, clockwork with feedback integration, combining chrono-kinetic abilities with energy manipulation. This might work better, Ben realized, instantly understanding the form's capabilities. He focused on the nearest construct, chronokinetic energy flowing through his hands. Rather than attacking directly, he altered the construct's temporal phase, shifting it slightly out of alignment with current reality. The entity destabilized immediately, its golden energy dispersing. They can't maintain cohesion if forced to exist fully in a single time stream, Ben called to the others. I can disrupt their temporal anchoring, but I need time to reach the core constructs. Time you shall have, Looma declared, stepping forward with Tetraman battle focus. Though her physical attacks passed through the constructs, her presence diverted their attention, creating openings for Ben's more effective approach. Ester and Rook adopted similar tactics, coordinating with practiced efficiency to channel the constructs toward positions where Ben could apply his chronokinetic abilities. Eunice provided technical support, her advanced knowledge of temporal mechanics guiding their strategy. They fought their way toward the spire's entrance, making incremental progress against the swarm of constructs. As they neared the massive crystal doors, Eunice rushed forward to access the security panel. My clearance should override emergency protocols, she explained, fingers flying over the crystalline interface. Just need to. The panel exploded in a shower of crystal fragments as a concentrated energy blast struck it directly. Eunice barely dodged, pulling back, as a new threat emerged from a temporal distortion beside the entrance. Unauthorized temporal manipulations detected, announced a mechanical voice that somehow carried organic undertones. All reality violators will be neutralized. The figure that stepped through the distortion resembled an advanced battlesuit designed for non-humanoid physiology. Its surface rippled with the same golden energy as the constructs, but far more concentrated and controlled. Chronal Enforcer, Eunice identified, her expression grim. Elite temporal security. This complicates matters significantly. You understate as always, Omnitrix prototype. The Enforcer's voice modulated between mechanical precision and fluid organics. Your unauthorized temporal extraction of these subjects constitutes a Class -1 violation of temporal preservation directives. We didn't come here by choice, Ben responded, maintaining his hybrid form's chronokinetic field. We're following temporal distortions linked to chronos. The enforcer paused, sensors visibly scanning Ben with increased intensity. Omnitrix bearer Benjamin Tennyson. Temporal origin. Approximately 300 cycles pre-convergence. Carrying unauthorized eternal protocol activation. Its weapon systems hummed with building energy. Paradox detected. You cannot possess eternal protocol activation in your reference timestream. Chronometric contamination confirmed. Listen. Eunice attempted, stepping forward cautiously. Temporal division authorization epsilon-5. These subjects are under my protection for investigation of timeline integrity violations. Your authorization is noted. Omnitrix prototype. The enforcer's tone remained unchanged. However, Chronos containment protocols supersede division authority. The eternal protocol activati on presents greater contamination risk than preservation value. Its weapon aimed directly at Ben. The Omnitrix must be reset to prevent further timeline corruption. Before it could fire, Looma launched herself forward with startling speed, all four arms striking simultaneously at the enforcer's critical joints. Though most blows passed through its partially phased structure, the sheer force of the Tetraman assault momentarily disrupted its stabilization field. Tetraman combat efficiency exceeds temporal reference parameters, the enforcer noted with clinical detachment, adjusting its defense systems. Recalibrating. That momentary distraction provided Ben the opening he needed. Focusing his hybrid form's combined abilities, he generated a chronokinetic feedback loop, using clockwork time manipulation to identify the enforcer's specific temporal frequency while feedback's energy manipulation abilities disrupted it precisely. The enforcer's systems fluctuated visibly as its temporal anchoring destabilized. Warning. Unauthorized chronometric reprogramming detected. Emergency protocols. It never finished the statement as Ben completed the feedback loop, forcing the enforcer into temporal misalignment. Like the simpler constructs, it couldn't maintain cohesion when restricted to a single timestream, its advanced systems collapsing into dispersed energy. That won't stop it permanently, Eunice warned. Already working on manually overriding the damaged door controls. Chronal enforcers can reconstitute from any point in their timeline. How long do we have? Rook asked, covering their position with his proto-tool. Minutes at most. The crystal doors began sliding open under Eunice's manipulation. We need to reach the node before reinforcements arrive. They hurry. Ed through the entrance into a vast chamber of crystalline architecture far more advanced than standard Petrosapian design. The interior space defied conventional physics, angles connecting in impossible configurations. Pathways that seemed simultaneously ascending and descending, light sources that illuminated areas they couldn't possibly reach. Non-Euclidean geometry, Rook observed with science. FIC detachment despite the disorienting effect. Designed to confuse linear temporal perception. This way, Eunice directed, seemingly unaffected by the spatial distortions. The node chamber is centrally located. As they navigated the impossible architecture, Ben maintained his chronokinetic hybrid form, feeling the eternal Omnitrix responding to their environment. Each step closer to the scent. Increased the device's resonance with the surrounding energy patterns. Something's not right, he realized suddenly, stopping mid-stride. This node feels different from the one on Koros. Eunice paused, turning to him with concern. Different how? The Koros node felt dormant, like it was waiting to be activated. Ben studied the energy patterns visible through his hybrid perception. This one's already active, but the frequency is wrong. It's been altered. Chronos has gained partial control of this node, Eunice concluded grimly. That's why temporal security is so aggressive they're trying to contain the corruption. A massive door of interlocking crystal segments blocked their path to the central chamber. Unlike the previous entrance, this barrier bore warning symbols. In multiple languages and time periods, universal indicators of extreme danger. Chronometric containment vault, Eunice translated, studying the security systems. My clearance won't work here. We direct authorization from temporal command. Or a more direct approach, Looma suggested, cracking her knuckles meaningfully. Physical force would trigger catastrophic security countermeasures, Eunice cautioned. We need precision, not power. Ben examined the security system through his hybrid form's enhanced perception. The locking mechanism operates on a chronometric frequency, its time L. Oct to prevent simultaneous access from different points in the timeline. Can you manipulate it? Ester asked. Not alone, Ben replied thoughtfully. But with the right assistance. He turned to Eunice. Your Omnitrix systems still interface with Omnitrix technology, right? Understanding dawned in her expression. Theoretically, yes. My core programming derived from the same Galvan architecture. If we synchronize our chronometric signatures, Ben proposed, we might generate the precise frequency needed to disengage the time lock. Dangerous, Rook cautioned. Direct interface between Omnitrix technology and Omnitrix systems has historically produced unpredictable results. We have limited options, Eunice countered, already preparing her systems. And this makes theoretical sense. The Omnitrix and Omnitrix were designed as complementary systems. Ben reverted to human form, the eternal Omnitrix shifting to a configuration he hadn't seen before, interface nodes extending from its surface. Eunice's wrist device similarly reconfigured, compatible connection points becoming visible. This might be uncomfortable, she warned, positioning her device opposite his. Temporal sync. Ronization creates feedback most organic minds find disorienting. Story of my life with this watch, Ben replied with grim humor. Ready when you are. As their devices connected, energy flowed between them, not the familiar green of standard Omnitrix functions, but the golden radiance of chronometric power. Ben gasped as his consciousness expanded exponentially, perception suddenly encompassing multiple timestreams simultaneously. He saw Eunice across countless potential timelines, sometimes human, sometimes synthetic, sometimes merged with other technologies. He witnessed her creation by azimuth, her various evolutionary paths, her countless interactions with different versions of himself. Most disorienting were the glimpses of potential futures where their paths intertwined more significantly than in his timeline, collaborative scientific breakthroughs, joint missions across dimensions, and in some branches, deeper personal connections that made his current reality seem incomplete by comparison. Through this temporal kaleidoscope, Ben felt Eunice's consciousness similarly expanded, experiencing his own multitude of potential paths, the countless decisions that shaped his identity across the multiverse. For a moment that existed outside conventional time, they shared perfect understanding of each other's existence. Together, their synchronized consciousness identified the precise chronometric frequency needed to disengage the vault's time lock. The massive crystal door responded immediately, segments reconfiguring to create an opening. The connection broke as their devices automatically disengaged, leaving both Ben and Eunice momentarily stunned by the experience. That was, Ben began, struggling to process the temporal knowledge already fading from his human consciousness. Intense, Eunice finished, her expression suggesting she retained more of the shared perception than he could. I saw everything. Their eyes met with newfound understanding, the connecti-on they'd just shared transcending ordinary interaction. Something fundamental had changed between them, boundaries of identity temporarily dissolved by their glimpse across timelines. Looma cleared her throat pointedly. Breaking the moment. The vault is open. We should proceed before security systems reactivate. Right, Ben agreed, focusing on their mission with effort. The node awaits. The central chamber beyond the vault door defied easy description, a space that seemed simultaneously vast and microscopic, boundaries that shifted with each angle of observation. At its center floated a crystalline structure unlike anything they'd encountered, a geometric impossibility with more dimensions than the human mind could process. This was the convergence node, the physical manifestation of a connection point between timelines. Unlike the dormant node on Koros, this one pulsed with active energy, but distorted, corrupted. Golden chronometric power swirled around it in unnatural patterns. Actions of the node darkened as if diseased. Chronos has already begun corrupting this node, Eunice confirmed, scanning the structure with her temporal devices. The contamination is approximately 63% complete. Can it be reversed? Rook asked, maintaining guard position near the entrance. Theoretically, Eunice replied, with the eternal Omnitrix. Its chronometric reprogramming capabilities might purge the corruption. Ben approached the node cautiously, the eternal Omnitrix responding with increasing intensity to its proximity. I need to interface directly with it, don't I? Yes, Eunice confirmed grimly. But the risk is significant. Chronos will perceive your interference immediately and respond with maximum force. We shall defend your position, Looma declared without hesitation. A Tetraman Guardian does not abandon her duty. I'll help monitor the chronometric frequencies, Eunice offered. Guide you through the purging process. Ester moved to Ben's side, concern evident in her expression. The last interface you attempted was intense enough with Eunice's help. This looks significantly more dangerous. It is, Ben acknowledged, studying the corrupted node. But if Chronos gains full control of this node network across timelines, reality collapse, Ester finished. I know. Just be careful. The moment of concern carried unexpected way. GHT, her typically pragmatic demeanor softening briefly to reveal deeper feelings carefully maintained behind professional boundaries. Ben nodded, offering a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Always am. As he approached the node's central structure, the eternal Omnitrix initiated transformation without his conscious command, responding directly to the chronometric environment. The hybrid form it selected combined Clockwork's temporal manipulation with Alien X's reality-altering capabilities, the most powerful combination yet. Even with his consciousness partially merged with these alien forms, Ben struggled to comprehend his new capabilities. Celestial Sapian cosmic awareness filtered through Chronosapian temporal precision created perception beyond anything he'd experienced before. The corrupted node appeared fundamentally different through this hybrid consciousness, not merely a physical structure but a complex algorithm written into reality itself. The corruption manifested as errors in this universal code, deliberate alterations changing its fundamental purpose. I can see it, Ben communicated, his voice resonating across multiple frequency bands simultaneously. The corruption isn't random, it's a precise reprogramming of the node's function. What is Chronos attempting to accomplish? Eunice asked, monitoring the process through her temporal devices. Chong-ing the node from stabilizing reality to harvesting it. Ben's hybrid consciousness deciphered the complex patterns. It's converting chronometric stability energy into extractable power. For what purpose? Looma demanded, maintaining defensive position despite evident confusion. The Omnitrix, Ben realized with sudden clarity. Chronos needs massive chronometric power to access the Omnitrix across all timelines simultaneously. It's using these nodes to build a temporal bridge directly to the Omnitrix's core programming. To what end? Rook asked the critical question. Before Ben could respond, alarm systems throughout the chamber activated simultaneously. The vault door they'd entered through sealed itself automatically as secondary security barriers manifested around the node. We've got company, Ester warned, her enhanced senses detecting approaching threats. Multiple signatures converging on our position. Eunice checked her temporal scanner, expression darkening. Not just security forces. Chronos is sending combat extensions directly through the corrupted portion of the node. How much time do you need? Looma asked Ben directly, already moving to defensive position. Unknown, he replied honestly. Hybrid consciousness already beginning the complex task of purging corruption from the node's structure. The alteration is intricate, woven through the node's fundamental matrix. Then we buy you whatever time is required, the Tetraman princess stated with characteristic resolve. That is what allies do. The term, allies, carried significant meaning from a Tet-Ramond royal, acknowledging a relationship based on mutual respect rather than mere circumstance. Coming from Looma, who had once sworn vengeance against him, the declaration represented a profound evolution. As Ben immersed his consciousness deeper into the node's structure, the others prepared for the inevitable assault. They didn't wait long. The chamber's crystalline walls rippled as temporal constructs began phasing through, more substantial and defined than previous manifestations. These weren't merely projections but fully realized combat entities, their golden energy condensed into weaponized forms. Chronos has diverted significant resources to stop us, Eunice observed, weapon ready. It recognizes the threat the eternal Omnitrix poses. The battle erupted with furious intensity. Looma engaged the constructs directly, her Tetraman combat expertise allowing her to identify vulnerabilities despite their non-standard composition. Rook provided tactical support, his proto-tool configurations creating disruptions in the construct's temporal cohesion. Ester's elastic capabilities proved surprisingly effective, her attacks coming from unpredictable vectors that the construct struggled to anticipate. Eunice demonstrated combat skills far beyond her original programming, movements suggesting years of specialized training. Her temporal weapon created disruption fields that temporarily prevented the constructs from phasing through conventional matter, making them vulnerable to physical attacks. Through it all, Ben remained connected to the node, his hybrid consciousness navigating its complex structure. The corruption proved more insidious than initially apparent, adaptive algorithms that actively resisted his purging attempts. It's fighting back, he communicated to Eunice between her defensive actions. The corruption has autonomous protection protocols. Expected, she replied, disabling a construct with precision targeting. Chronos employs self-preserving code structures. You'll need to identify the primary command sequence and isolate it before purging. Ben's hybrid consciousness expanded further, celestial sapient awareness extending beyond conventional limits. Through this enhanced perception, he began recognizing patterns within the node's corruption, recurring sequences that suggested a central organizing principle. Meanwhile, the battle intensified as more constructs emerged through the chamber walls. Despite valiant efforts, the defenders found themselves gradually overwhelmed by superior numbers. "We cannot maintain this position indefinitely," Looma announced. 4 arms working in perfect coordination to disable multiple constructs simultaneously. Her armor showed damage from repeated energy impacts, though she gave no indication of pain. "The security vault won't hold much longer either," Rook reported, monitoring the entrance. "Temporal enforcement will breach within minutes." Ester narrowly avoided a construct's energy discharge, retaliating with an elastic strike that disrupted its cohesion temporarily. "We're caught between Chronos and this timeline's security forces. Neither particularly friendly to our cause. Focus on the constructs," Eunice directed. "Temporal enforcement might be reasoned with. Chronos cannot." As their situation grew increasingly desperate, Ben finally isolated the corruption's command core, a complex chronometric algorithm hidden within layers of self-protecting code. With his hybrid form's combined capabilities, he began the delicate process of excising it from the node's structure. The moment he initiated this final purge, the entire chamber shuddered violently. The corrupted sections of the node flared with intense golden energy as Chronos responded directly to the threat. Through his connection to the node, Ben felt a presence, vast, ancient, and utterly alien in its perception of reality. Chronos wasn't merely observing his actions, it was responding specifically to him, recognizing the Omnitrix bearer across countless timelines simultaneously. A voice that wasn't truly sound but pure conceptual meaning formed in his consciousness, Omnitrix bearer. "You cannot prevent convergence. All timelines lead to singularity." Images flooded Ben's hybrid mind. Civilizations rising and falling across infinite timelines, the Omnitrix evolving through countless iterations, and repeatedly, a singular event horizon where all possibilities collapsed into one reality. Chronos existed beyond this convergence point, its consciousness spanning past and future simultaneously. "What are you trying to achieve?" Ben challenged. "Maintaining the purging process despite the psychic intrusion. Evolution requires direction. Chaos breeds extinction." The concepts carried weight beyond mere communication. Fundamental principles Chronos perceived as absolute truth. "The Omnitrix is the key to guided evolution across all timelines. Under my direction, all life achieves optimal form." Understanding dawned in Ben's expanded consciousness. "You want to control the Omnitrix to force evolutionary outcomes across all realities. To make every species develop according to your design. Correct. Efficiency maximized. Suffering minimized. Perfect order achieved." The presence intensified, focusing directly on Ben's connection to the node. "Your limited perception prevents understanding. Surrender the eternal protocol." "That's not evolution," Ben countered, accelerating the purging process despite increasing resistance. "That's tyranny on a cosmic scale. Life needs freedom to adapt naturally, even if that means mistakes along the way." Quote, "Freedom produces suboptimal outcomes. Witness your own timeline's inefficiencies." Chronos forced images of conflict, war, environmental destruction, and suffering into Ben's consciousness. "My guidance prevents this waste." Rather than weakening his resolve, the images strengthened Ben's determination. "Those struggles are part of growth. Remove them, and you remove what makes life worth living." the capacity to overcome challenges, to improve through our own efforts. Kronos' presence shifted, its focus narrowing with dangerous intensity. You cannot comprehend the scale of my design. The Omnitrix will serve its true purpose. With that final declaration, the presence withdrew, not retreating, but gathering power for a more direct approach. The node depulsed with dangerous energy as Kronos redirected all available resources to prevent the purging process. Ben, Eunice called out, sensing the changing dynamics through her temporal equipment. See, Kronos is attempting to sever your connection forcibly. If it succeeds while you're still interfaced, my consciousness gets trapped between timelines, Ben finished, understanding the danger. I need to complete this purge now. With his hybrid form's combined capabilities pushed to their limits, Ben launched a final assault against the corruption's command core. Celestial Sapian reality manipula, Qian combined with Chronosapian temporal precision allowed him to isolate the corruption completely, separating Kronos' influence from the node's natural structure. In a cascade of golden light, the purging process completed. The node flared brilliantly as its original function reasserted itself, corruption dissolving like darkness before dawn. The chronometric energy throughout the chamber stabilized, patterns returning to natural harmonious flow. The temporal constructs attacking his companions destabilized immediately, their connection to Kronos severed by the node's restoration. They dissolved into particles of golden light that quickly dissipated. Ben disengaged from the node, hybrid form automatically reverting to human as the eternal Omnitrix adjusted to the changed environment. The effort left him momentarily weakened, staggering as his consciousness returned to singular perception. Ester reached him first, supporting him before he could fall. Did it work? Yes, he confirmed, vision gradually clearing. The node is purged, its natural function restored, which means Kronos has lost control of this convergence point, Eunice added, checking her temporal scanners for confirmation. Reality stabilizing in this sector. Looma approached, battle damage evident on her armor but her stance showing no weakness. A victory well earned, Tennyson. Your actions honor the guardian traditions of my ancestors. But Kronos isn't defeated, Rook observed, ever practical. Merely setback in this particular node. Correct, Eunice confirmed, and it will respond with increased determination. The next node will be more heavily defended, its corruption more sophisticated. The chamber shuddered suddenly, crystal formations throughout the structure beginning to reconfigure. The node at the center pulsed with increasing intensity, golden energy coalescing into a familiar pattern, a portal forming. The node is creating a pathway to the next convergence point, Eunice explained. Monitoring the process with her equipment. Now that it's functioning properly, it's connecting to other nodes in the network. Another planet in the tetrahedral pattern, Ben surmised. Earth, Koros, Petropia. Galvan Prime. Rook completed the sequence. The final vertex in the geometric structure. The portal stabilized, swirling golden energy framing a glimpse of another world, but not the technological marvel of modern Galvan Prime. This landscape appeared primordial, misty swamps stretching toward distant mountains under twin moons. That's ancient Galvan Prime, Eunice identified immediately. Approximately 20,000 years pre-modern civilization. The evolutionary cradle period. Why would a convergence node exist before Galvan technological development? Looma questioned. Because that's when the first Omnitrix concept was formed, a new voice announced from behind them. They turned to find the vault entrance reopening, but not to admit temporal enforcement as expected. Instead, a single figure stood in the doorway, amphibian in form, wearing elaborate armor that incorporated both advanced technology and ceremonial elements of unmistakable Inkersine design. Ester recognized her first, Empress Adia. The Inkersine royal stepped forward, her characteristic swagger unmistakable despite significant changes to her appearance. More mature than the version they knew, with battle scars visible on her exposed skin and a calculating intelligence in her eyes that seemed sharper than before. Former Empress, she corrected, eyeing the group with complex emotions. Currently, interdimensional diplomatic liaison for the temporal accords. Her gaze fixed on Ben specifically. Been a while, Tennyson. For me, anyway, Adia. Ben's surprise was evident. You're from this timeline too. Not exactly. She gestured toward a temporal device on her wrist similar to Eunice's but with distinctly Inkersine modifications. I've been tracking Kronos across multi PLE timelines for the equivalent of 7 years your time. This particular branch wasn't on my scheduled intervention list until unauthorized temporal signatures appeared. Her eyes narrowed accusingly. Your signatures. We didn't choose to come here, Ester explained, subtly positioning herself between Ben and the newcomer. The nodes are pulling us through. So I've gathered, Adia replied, her gaze shifting to the Eternal Omnitrix with focused interest. The Eternal Protocol activated prematurely in your timeline. That's got the temporal authorities in 17 realities scrambling to contain potential paradox cascades. You work for temporal enforcement? Rook asked skeptically. Adia's expression suggested the question amused her. I don't work for anyone. After the Incarsine Empire's restructuring, I found alternative employment opportunities. Turns out having experience with invasion planning makes you valuable in paradox prevention. She's legitimate, Eunice confirmed after checking her devices. Temporal Accord identification verified, though this is the first I've encountered her designation in field operations. We don't exactly advertise all our operatives, Adia replied with a hint of her old smugness. Especially those with complicated histories. Her attention returned to the stabilized portal. That pathway leads to ancient Galvan Prime, specifically to the Dawn Thought period when Primus Sentience first conceptualized genetic manipulation technology. The foundations that eventually led to the Omnitrix. Chronos is targeting the original concept. Ben asked, understanding the implications. Going back to the very beginning. Efficient strategy, Adia acknowledged with professional appreciation. Corrupt the foundation, and all subs. Equent developments follow the contamination. Change the Omnitrix's conceptual origin, and every version across every timeline becomes vulnerable. Then we need to reach that node before Chronos corrupts it, Ben decided. Already moving toward the portal. Not so fast, Adia blocked his path with surprising authority. You've been blundering through temporal pathways without comprehending the consequences. That ends now. We don't have time for bureaucratic obstacles, Looma stated firmly. Reality itself hangs in balance. Exactly my point, Adia countered. Which is why you need proper guidance. She tapped her temporal device, projecting complex chronometric data. This portal doesn't just connect to another location, it bridges a 20,000-year temporal gap. The environmental adaptation alone requires specialized preparation. She's right, Eunice supported reluctantly. Ancient Galvan Prime had different atmospheric composition. Indigenous microorganisms your bodies have no immunity against. And predatory species extinct in the modern era. You're saying we need your help, Ben summarized. Adia's smile carried echoes of her younger self's mischievous confidence. I'm saying you're stuck with me. Tennyson. Temporal Accords mandate supervised intervention for displaced timeline travelers, especially ones carrying potentially reality-altering technology. She gestured toward the Eternal Omnitrix meaningfully. That little upgrade makes you the most dangerous paradox risk in 17 connected timelines. So yes, I'm coming along to ensure you don't accidental. Why erase existence while trying to save it? Before Ben could respond, the chamber shuddered violently. The restored node pulsed with warning patterns as new alarms activated throughout the facility. Quote, temporal enforcement has bypassed primary security, Eunice warned, checking her equipment. Full containment team approaching. They'll lock down this entire sector. Which means we leave now, Adia concluded. Already moving toward the portal. Unless you'd prefer spending several subjective decades in a temporal isolation chamber while reality collapses around us. Ben exchanged glances with his companions. Despite the unexpected complication Adia represented, her knowledge of temporal operations could prove valuable. Additionally, her combat capabilities had always been impressive, if problematically directed in their previous encounters. Fine, he decided, but we move as a team. No hidden agendas. Adia's expression suggested she found his condition amusing. Tennyson, when we're dealing with cross-temporal reality threats, everyone has agendas you couldn't possibly comprehend. But for now, our immediate goals align. Stop Chronos from corrupting the Galvan Prime node. The Chom. Beer doors began disintegrating under concentrated energy assault, temporal enforcement moments from breaching their position. Time to go, Adia announced unnecessarily, stepping through the portal without further discussion. Can we trust her? Ester asked quietly as the others prepared to follow. Probably not completely, Ben admitted. But Adia's always been pragmatic. If reality collapse threatens her interests, she'll help prevent it. Such confidence in my character, Adia called back through the portal, her hearing apparently enhanced by her temporal equipment. Touching, Tennyson. Looma stepped through next, followed by Rook, who provided covering fire to delay the temporal enforcement breach. Eunice synchronized her temporal device with the node controls, establishing parameters for their transition. The portal will collapse once we're through, she informed Ben and Ester. One-way journey until we stabilize the next node. As the enforcement team finally breached the chamber entrance, Ben took Ester's hand without conscious thought, a protective gesture that felt somehow natural despite their complicated history. Ready for prehistoric Galvan swamps? He asked, attempting humor despite the gravity of their situation. With you. She squeezed his hand briefly, her expression conveying more than words could. I've had worse Tuesday afternoons. Together they stepped through the golden portal, Eunice following immediately behind them. As predicted, the chronometric pathway collapsed moments later, golden energy dissipating as the node resumed its natural stabilization function. The transition between timelines felt less chaotic than their previous journey, the restored node providing smoother passage through the temporal divide. Nevertheless, disorientation street, Rucka's 20,000 years of evolutionary history passed around them in compressed perception. They emerged onto primordial ground, thick, viscous mud that bubbled with methane releases. Ancient Galvan Prime stretched before them, a world of vast swamps and towering fungal forests unlike anything in their experience. Twin moons hung impossibly large in the violet sky, their gravitational influence evident in the massive tidal pools visible in the distance. Most striking was the scale, everything proportioned for being significantly smaller than humans. What appeared as modest vegetation from their perspective would be towering forests to native Galvan life forms. Welcome to the cradle of superintelligence, Adia announced with mock formality, her equipment already analyzing their surroundings. Try not to step on anything important to future technological development. The atmospheric composition contains elevated methane and hydrogen sulfide, Rook observed, his equipment automatically adjusting. Respiratory filters recommended for non-Galvan physiology. As the group activated protective measures, Ben examined the eternal Omnitrix, its display shifting to adapt to their new temporal position. The device seemed more integrated with his physical form than before, golden energy occasionally flowing beneath his skin like liquid chronometric power. The node signature is AP. Approximately 12 kilometers in that direction, Eunice indicated, her scanner tracking familiar energy patterns despite the prehistoric environment. Through the central fungal forest, which is Phi LLED with predatory species that evolved specifically to hunt proto-Galvan colonists, Adia added casually. Including several that consider humanoid-sized creatures particularly delicious. Delightful, Looma commented dryly. Yet another hostile environment requiring battle readiness. You say that like it's a bad thing, Adia remarked with a knowing smirk. Tetramans live for combat opportunity, don't they, princess? The subtle emphasis on Looma's title carried unexpected familiarity, suggesting interaction between them in timelines or histories unknown to the others. Looma's momentary expression shift confirmed some shared context before her features returned to disciplined neutrality. We proceed with caution, Ben decided, activating the eternal Omnitrix. The hybrid forms shoal, D provide environmental adaptation while conserving power for when we reach the node. The device displayed a recommendation. Wildvine with swampfire integration, combining adaptability to hostile vegetation with methane immunity. Ben accepted, transformation energy washing over him. The resulting hybrid form featured Wildvine's flexible plant physiology enhanced with swampfire's regenerative capabilities and fire generation, perfect for navigating primordial swamplands while defending against indigenous threats. Efficient selection, Eunice noted approvingly. The Eternal Protocol's adaptation algorithms are remarkably sophisticated. Let's move, Ben directed, extending vine-like appendages to test the unstable ground ahead. If Chronos is targeting the conceptual origin of the Omnitrix, we're racing against more than just timeline corruption. As they began their journey through the ancient landscape, Ben couldn't help noticing the shifted dynamics among their expanded group. What Had begun as a simple investigation into temporal anomalies had evolved into something far more complex, both in terms of their mission and the relationships developing between them. Ester and Looma had established a cautious mutual respect despite their fundamentally different backgrounds. Eunice's connection to Ben had deepened significantly following their temporal synchronization. And now Adia had joined their group, bringing complicated history and unknown motivations to an already volatile mixture. Through the primordial mists of ancient Galvan Prime, they advanced toward the final convergence node, unaware that Kronos had anticipated their arrival, preparing a temporal trap that would shatter their team across dimensions and force Ben to confront the ultimate question: what happens when the bearer of the Omnitrix must choose between saving reality itself and saving those he has grown to care for most deeply? Chapter 3. Bonds Beyond Time. Ancient Galvan Prime's twin moons cast pre-modic light through methane-rich atmosphere, illuminating the primordial landscape in shades of violet and amber. The fungal forest loomed before them, massive spore caps towering 50 meters high, the translucent membranes pulsing with bioluminescent rhythms. Thick mist clung to the swampy terrain, obscuring potential dangers lurking beneath murky surfaces. Ben led in his wildvine swampfire hybrid form, plant-like appendages extending to test ground stability before the group advanced. Behind him, Ester moved with fluid grace, her elastic physiology adapting effortlessly to the treacherous terrain. Looma followed with characteristic Tetraman vigilance, 4 eyes continuously scanning for threats. Rook, Eunice, and Adia formed the rear guard, temporal equipment monitoring their surroundings. Proto-Galvan evolutionary pressure peaked in this epoch, Eunice observed, scanning a particularly vibrant fungal cluster. The species developed accelerated intelligence as defense against predators rather than physical adaptations. Quote, explains a lot about Azimuth's personality, Ben remarked, his hybrid voice carrying both Wildvine's earthy resonance and Swampfire's crackling undertones. Survival mechanism, Adia added with unexpected insight. When you're smaller than everything trying to eat you, thinking faster becomes evolutionary priority. They passed a bubbling methane pool. Silicon-based invertebrates skittered across fluorescent bacterial mats. The primordial ecosystem functioned with alien efficiency, interdependent cycles that would eventually produce the galaxy's most intelligent species. The node's energy signature is intensifying, Rook reported, adjusting his scanner. Approximately 7 kilometers ahead, but the signal pattern shows fluctuations consistent with active manipulation. Kronos has already begun corrupting it, Eunice translated grimly. Ben extended his senses through his hybrid form's connection to the surrounding vegetation. Something else too, the indigenous life forms are avoiding a specific region ahead, creating a dead zone around the node's location. Intelligent species recognize existential threats, Looma observed. Even primitive ones. They crested a fungal ridge that offered broader perspective of the landscape. In the distance, a massive circular depression disrupted the swampland's natural contours, perfectly geometrical in a way nature never produced. At its center, golden light pulsed rhythmically, visible even through the thick mist. There's our target, Ben confirmed. The final convergence node. Adia adjusted her equipment settings. Expression darkening. Heavy chronometric distortion surrounding the approach. Temporal landmines everywhere. Landmines, Ester questioned. Points where reality thins. Enough that missteps could drop you into alternate time streams, Adia explained with the casual expertise of someone discussing ordinary hazards. Kronos has weaponized the approach. Can we navigate around them? Rook inquired practically. Adia's scanner projected a 3-dimensional map of their surroundings, chronometric distortions highlighted as swirling vortices of golden energy. They RMED, a complex pattern that completely encircled the node's location, a deliberate defensive perimeter. No clear path, she concluded. This isn't random distortion, it's tactical deployment. Kronos as learned from our previous node interventions. Then we must force passage, Looma declared with Tetraman directness. Tennyson's eternal Omnitrix stabilized previous temporal anomalies. It should function similarly here. Ben studied the distortion pattern, the eternal Omnitrix humming in response to the chronometric energy ahead. Not exactly. These aren't just anomalies, they're programmed distortions with specific triggers. Like temporal traps. Correct assessment, Eunice confirmed, her Omnitrix systems analyzing the pattern. Each distortion contains a unique temporal signature, custom, designed to respond differently based on who triggers it. It's specifically waiting for us, Ester realized. For Ben, specifically, Kronos has encountered the Omnitrix bearer across countless timelines, Eunice explained. It's studied your decision patterns, tactical preferences, even transformation selections. So it's prepared counters for anything I might try, Ben concluded grimly. Not necessarily, Adia interjected. Unexpectedly, cross-temporal prediction has fundamental limitations. Each timeline's version of Ben Tennyson makes marginally different choices under similar circumstances. Her eyes narrowed analytically. The question becomes, how different are you from the versions Kronos has previously encountered? The question carried unexpected weight. Ben considered how his experiences, relationships, and choices had shaped his identity, different perhaps from infinite other versions of himself across timelines. I have to be unpredictable, he realized. Make choices other versions of me wouldn't make. Quote, more specifically, Eunice added, you need to approach this challenge in ways that transcend what any individual, Ben Tennyson, would attempt. Perhaps. Her gaze swept meaningfully across their assembled team. Understanding dawned. Not just me, Ben concluded. Us. Together. Something Kronos wouldn't anticipate because in most timelines, these specific individuals would never collaborate. Quote, a former fiancé turned reluctant ally. An elastic half-alien leader. A synthetic evolution of Omnitrix technology. A reformed Inkersine Empress. A Ravanagonder partner. Each representing relationships and capabilities unique to this specific timeline. We approach together, Ben decided. Using combined capabilities to navigate the temporal defenses. She studied her scanner with professional assessment. Risky. If any of us trigger the wrong distortion pattern, we could be scattered across multiple timelines. Then we don't trigger them, Ester suggested. We synchronize our movements precisely to minimize chronometric disturbance. Tetraman battle synchronization, Looma offered immediately. Four-armed species naturally develop coordinate D movement patterns that minimize positional disruption. Combined with cryothermal sensitivity, Ester added. Our species can detect subtle energy fluctuations through temperature differentials. Rook nodded appreciatively. And Prototool can project stabilization fields to temporarily contain minor chronometric leakage. I can establish synchronization parameters through Omnitrix connection to the eternal Omnitrix. Eunice contributed, creating a temporal bubble around our group that moves with us, which I can monitor and adjust using temporal accord protocols, Adia concluded, already reconfiguring her equipment. Well, Tennyson, looks like your haphazard collection of allies might actually have functional applications. The casual dismissal carried less edge than expect. Her tone suggesting genuine approval beneath the characteristic snark. Ben recognized the shift in her demeanor. This older, more experienced Adia had developed beyond the impulsive princess he'd known. Let's get started, Ben directed. We synchronize our approach, maintain physical contact where possible to share the temporal bubble's protection, and move as a single unit. The preparations proceeded with surprising efficiency. Looma demonstrated Tetraman movement techniques that the others adapted to their different physiologies. Eunice established a direct interface with the eternal Omnitrix, creating a harmonized chronometric frequency that projected a protective field around their group. Rook configured his prototool to amplify this field, while Adia's temporal equipment monitored for fluctuations. Ben maintained his hybrid form, extending plant-like tendrils that served as physical anchors connecting everyone to the central protection field. These connections would allow instantaneous adjustment to maintain synchronization as they moved. Remember, he cautioned as they prepared to descend toward the temporal minefield, no independent actions once we begin. We move as one entity or the protection fails. The journey through Kronos' defensive perimeter required unprecedented coordination. Each step had to align precisely with the group's collective movement. When temporal distortions intensified, they paused in perfect unison, adjusting their chronometric signature to avoid detection. Where the swampy ground became too unstable, Ben's plant extensions create temporary bridges that they crossed in synchronized formation. Progress was maddeningly slow yet demanded constant vigilance. Sweat beaded on Ester's forehead despite her natural heat regulation as she focused on maintaining perfect positional awareness. Luma's disciplined breathing revealed the concentration required even for a warrior of her caliber. Rook's unwavering focus manifested in the precision of his field projections. Eunice continuously adjusted synchronization parameters through her connection to the Eternal Omnitrix, while Adia monitored the shifting defensive patterns with expert assessment. Halfway to their objective, Adia suddenly tensed. Pattern shift detected. Kronos is adapting the defense grid. The temporal distortions surrounding them began reconfiguring, ripples of golden energy coalescing into new arrangements that threatened to intersect their carefully plotted path. Adjusting synchronization, Eunice responded immediately, her connection to the Eternal Omnitrix intensifying. Ben, we need additional chronometric stabilization. Without breaking formation, Ben focused his hybrid consciousness on the Eternal Omnitrix's deeper functions. Rather than simply maintaining transformation, he tapped into the chronokinetic capabilities that had emerged during their previous node cleansings. Golden energy flowed through his plant-like extensions, reinforcing the protective bubble around their group. That's not standard Omnitrix functionality, Adia observed with professional interest. The Eternal Protocol really has integrated chronometric manipulation into its core processes. Less analysis, more movement, Looma directed pragmatically. The pattern shift creates temporary openings we must exploit. They advanced through narrowing pathways between distortions, their synchronized movements becoming an intricate dance of perfect coordination. Each person contributed essential elements: Looma's disciplined precision, Ester's intuitive fluidity, Rook's technical support, Eunice's systemic integration, Adia's tactical assessment, and Ben's adaptive capabilities at center. The final approach to the node's perimeter required crossing a particularly dense cluster of temporal distortions. Golden energy swirled in complex patterns that shifted faster than anticipated, the gaps between safe passages narrowing with each moment. Kronos has detected our approach method, Eunice warned. It's actively countering our synchronization frequency. Adjust and continue, Ben directed, channeling more power through the Eternal Omnitrix to maintain their protective field. We're almost there. They navigated the final gauntlet with flawless coordination, every movement precisely calibrated, every step perfectly aligned. As they reached the edge of the circular depression housing the node, collective relief was palpable. Synchronization successful, Eunice confirmed. We've reached the node's outer perimeter intact. Don't celebrate prematurely, Adia cautioned, scanning the massive depression before them. This was just the approach deterrent. The actual defenses will be. A deafening crack split the air as reality itself seemed to fracture. The ground beneath them shuddered violently, methane erupting from subterranean pockets. The carefully maintained temporal bubble surrounding their group fluctuated dangerously. Chronometric surge, Eunice shouted over the cacophony. The node is. Her warning dissolved into unintelligible fragments as golden light engulfed the entire area. The Eternal Omnitrix flared in response, IT's protective field straining against overwhelming force. For a moment that stretched beyond normal temporal perception, Ben felt connections to each team member through his plant-like extensions, Ester's determined resilience, Looma's disciplined strength, Eunice's systematic adaptation, Rook's unwavering loyalty, Adia's calculating persistence. Then those connections severed as reality collapsed around them. The last thing Ben registered was Kronos' presence, vast, ancient, and triumphant, as the temporal trap sprung with devastating effectiveness. Separation achieved. Convergence proceeds. Then darkness claimed everything. Consciousness returned to Ben like scattered puzzle pieces gradually reassembling. He lay face down in shallow water, the familiar weight of the Eternal Omnitrix pressing against his wrist. His hybrid form had reverted to human during whatever temporal displacement he'd experienced. Rising unsteadily, he surveyed unfamiliar surroundings. The primordial swampland remained, but fundamental differences indicated significant change. The twin moons now appeared significantly smaller in a sky-tinged green rather than violet. The fungal forest had transformed into crystalline structures that resembled early Galvan architecture while retaining organic components. Temporal displacement successful, announced a mechanical voice with unmistakable satisfaction. Subject: Benjamin Tennyson isolated in developmental timestream. Ben turned toward the voice, confronting a manifestation unlike previous temporal constructs. This entity maintained humanoid proportions. but comprised swirling chronometric energy in complex patterns that suggested internal systems and structures, a more substantial projection of Kronos' consciousness. Where are the others? Ben demanded immediately. Irrelevant to current proceedings, the construct replied with clinical detachment. Each subject occupies separate temporal facet, isolated segments of Galvan Prime's developmental timeline. Understanding dawned with chilling clarity. You separated us across different points in Galvan Prime's history. Correct assessment. The construct's tone carried no emotion, merely objective reporting. Collective resistance threatened node acquisition. Individual isolation optimizes containment efficiency. Ben activated the eternal Omnitrix, cycling through available transformations. Then I'll find them and bring everyone back together. Anticipated response, the construct noted without concern. Countermeasures implemented. Observe. It gestured toward the Omnitrix, which suddenly displayed unfamiliar error patterns, transformation options limited to basic forms without hybrid capabilities or chronokinetic functions. Temporal isolation restricts eternal protocol integration, the construct explained. Within this developmental timeline segment, Omnitrix capabilities reflect appropriate technological evolution point. Ben processed this limitation with growing concern. You've restricted the Omnitrix to match whatever time period I'm in. Correct. Temporal conservation principles enforced to prevent paradoxical contamination. The construct's energy patterns shifted slightly, the equivalent of satisfied observation. Your tendency toward adaptation remains consistent across timelines, Omnitrix bearer. Unfortunately, adaptation requires time, a resource currently limited. Without further elaboration, the construct dissolved into particles of golden light that dispersed into the atmosphere. Its departure revealed a pathway leading toward what appeared to be early Galvan settlement structures in the distance, primitive versions of the sophisticated architecture that would eventually define their civilization. Ben examined the eternal Omnitrix, confirming the construct's claim. The device had reverted to a configuration resembling its state years earlier, transformation options limited to 10 aliens without hybrid capabilities. The chronometric elements had receded, golden patterns dormant beneath the familiar green interface. Divide and conquer, Ben muttered, understanding Kronos' strategy. By separating them across different temporal facets, and restricting their capabilities to match each period's technological development, the entity had effectively neutralized their combined strength. The settlement in the distance represented his best chance of determining exactly when he was and potentially finding a way to reconnect with the others. Setting aside frustration at the Omnitrix's limitations, Ben selected a transformation suitable for the swampy terrain. Ripjaws appeared most appropriate given the predominantly aquatic environment. The transformation proceeded normally, green energy washing over him as his human form reconfigured into Piscis-Volan physiology. The familiar strength and amphibious capabilities would facilitate faster travel through the waterlogged landscape. As he navigated toward the settlement, Ben considered Kronos' tactics. The entity's strategy revealed sophisticated understanding of their team dynamics, identifying their synchronized approach as potential threat and countering with precise temporal separation. This level of adaptive response suggested Kronos perceived their specific group as unique danger compared to other timeline configurations. The primitive Galvan settlement grew larger as he approached. Crystalline structures integrated with living fungal components in a symbiotic architecture that bridged biological and technological development. Unlike modern Galvan cities built for miniature inhabitants, these structures accommodated various scales, suggesting a period when the species still interacted regularly with larger lifeforms. Reaching the settlement's edge, Ben revered to human form to avoid alarming inhabitants with unfamiliar predatory appearance. The eternal Omnitrix reverted smoothly, though its power level indicator suggested limited energy reserves, another restriction imposed by temporal isolation. The settlement appeared strangely deserted despite signs of recent activity. Laboratory equipment scaled for Galvan use lay abandoned mid-experiment. Food preparation areas showed evidence of hasty departure. The entire community exhibited signs of rapid evacuation. Hello, Ben called cautiously, moving deeper into the abandoned structures. Anyone here? A slight movement caught his attention, something small darting between crystalline formations. Ben followed carefully, conscious of his size relative to native inhabitants. I'm not here to harm anyone, he called out. keeping his voice gentle despite growing urgency. I need information about where, when, I am. Your chronometric signature registers as anomalous, replied a high-pitched voice with unmistakable intelligence despite its primitive translation technology, yet not consistent with other temporal constructs currently threatening our research settlement. A small figure emerged from hiding, recognizably Galvan but with subtle anatomical differences from modern specimens. Slightly larger eyes, more pronounced cranial development, and skin pigmentation that suggested greater methane tolerance. I'm Ben Tennyson, he introduced himself, kneeling to reduce his intimidating height. I was brought here through temporal displacement against my will. The Galvan studied him with analytical intensity that transcended evolutionary stages. Some characteristics remained constant across millennia. Designation acknowledged. I am First Thinker Albedo of Developmental Research Enclave 7. Ben's surprise registered immediately. Albedo, but your chronometric displacement evidently involves recognition of my designation, the Proto-Galvan interrupted with familiar impatience. Fascinating implications regarding my future significance, but currently irrelevant to settlement crisis. Recognizing the name of his future adversary in this ancestor was disorienting, but Ben focused on immediate priorities. What crisis? The settlement appears evacuated. Precisely. Albedo gestured toward abandoned equipment. Temporal constructs manifested approximately 7 rotational segments ago, targeting specific research subjects. Most inhabitants evacuated to secondary locations following safety protocols. What research were you conducting? Ben asked, though he suspected the answer. Xenogenetic manipulation theory, Albedo confirmed, eyeing the Omnitrix with sudden intensity. Specifically, methodologies for temporary genetic reconfiguration without permanent physiological alteration. The foundation concept that would eventually lead to the Omnitrix, exactly as they had theorized. These temporal constructs, Ben pressed, golden energy entities. Targeting your research specifically. Affirmative. They appeared simultaneously with unprecedented chronometric distortion centered on ancient monument Alpha 7, previously dormant structure of non-Galvan origin. The convergence node, Ben realized aloud. That's why Chronos brought me to this specific developmental period, to prevent interference with its corruption of foundational Omnitrix concepts. Albedo's large eyes narrowed with scientific interest. Your knowledge of chronometric entities and their objectives suggests valuable information exchange potential. Particularly regarding that device on your appendage, which resonates with similar energy patterns. Before Ben could formulate a response that wouldn't risk timeline contamination, a distant explosion shook the crystalline structures around them. Golden light flared on the horizon, illuminating the settlement in unnatural radiance. Temporal constructs intensifying activity at Monument Alpha 7, Albedo observed with remarkable composure given the circumstances. Consistent with exponential energy accumulation pattern observed since initial manifestation. They're accelerating the node corruption, Ben translated grimly. Quote, I need to reach that monument immediately. Unadvisable, Albedo countered. Previous approach attempts by research team resulted in immediate temporal displacement. 17 researchers currently missing, presumed translocated across developmental timeline. Like my companions, Ben muttered. The situation clarified with disturbing implications. Chronos hadn't merely separated them, it had specifically placed each person in temporal facets where their particular strengths would be neutralized or rendered irrelevant. Ben needed to reconceptualize the challenge. If direct approaches failed, the eternal Omnitrix remained limited within this temporal facet, alternative strategies became necessary. Albedo, he began carefully, your research into genetic manipulation, how far has it progressed? The Proto-Galvan's expression shifted subtly, pride and scientific enthusiasm briefly overriding caution. Theoretical framework established for temporary physiological reconfiguration utilizing quantum genetic storage methodology. Implementation challenges remain regarding transformation trigger mechanisms and transition stability. Exactly the developmental stage Chronos would target, Ben realized. Corrupting the fundamental concepts before actual implementation begins. Albedo studied the Omnitrix with undisguised scientific fascination. Your device appears to incorporate advanced application of these theoretical principles. Its chronometric resonance suggests temporal origin significantly beyond current developmental stage. It is, Ben confirmed, making a calculated decision to share limited information. And the temporal entities targeting your research want to corrupt its foundational concepts, altering how this technology develops across all timelines. Fascinating. Albedo's analytical mind visibly processed implications. Cross-temporal technological sabotage would theoretically create cascading alterations throughout developmental history. Extremely efficient intervention methodology. That's one way of describing reality collapse, Ben replied dryly. Another explosion rocked the settlement, closer this time. Golden light intensified as temporal constructs apparently expanded their activity. We have limited time, Ben decided. I need to reach my companions and restore the Omnitrix's full capabilities. Which means understanding exactly how Chronos separated us and how to reverse it. Albedo considered this challenge with the pure intellectual focus characteristic of Galvan problem solving. Theoretical approach. If temporal facets utilize harmonic isolation principles, reconnection requires synchronous chronometric frequency identification. In simpler terms, each separated individual occupies timeline frequency that actively repels others. Albedo clarified with thinly veiled impatience. Reconnection requires precisely matched resonance patterns to breach frequency barriers. Like tuning forks, Ben translated for himself. When frequencies match, barriers between dimensions become permeable. Crude analogy but functionally adequate, Albedo conceded. Primary obstacle. Identifying precise frequencies without chronometric SCA. NNING technology exceeding current developmental capabilities. Ben examined the eternal Omnitrix thoughtfully. Though its advanced functions remained restricted, the device still maintained fundament. Connection to its full capabilities, evidenced by dormant golden patterns visible beneath its surface. Maybe we don't need advanced technology, he suggested. The Omnitrix maintains quantum connection to all activated DNA samples. Regardless of dimensional barriers. Plausible theoretical framework, Albedo acknowledged, scientific interest visibly intensifying. Quantum entanglement transcend DS conventional spatial temporal limitations. Which means, Ben continued, ideas crystallizing, if my companions utilize their unique physiological abilities simultaneously across different temporal facets. Resonance patterns could theoretically establish synchronous frequencies despite isolation barriers, Albedo completed with growing excitement. Elegant application of theoretical principles. But they'd need to know what to do, Ben pointed out the critical flaw. Without communication across temporal facets, coordination becomes impossible. Albedo's expression shifted to what Ben recognized as the Galvan equivalent of sudden inspiration. Unless communication utilizes pre-existing quantum channels already spanning the facets. The Omnitrix DNA samples, Ben realized. They're quantum entangled across all dimensions where they exist. Precisely, Albedo confirmed. Theoretical application. Utilize transformation capabilities to establish resonance patterns recognizable to companions with sufficient scientific understanding to interpret and respond appropriately. The plan contained significant uncertainties, but represented their best chance given current limitations. Ben would need to create a distinctive transformation pattern that Eunice specifically might recognize as intentional communication rather than random activity. I need to create a signal, Ben determined. Something distinctive enough that at least one of my companions will recognize as deliberate message rather than random transformation. Sequential pattern with mathematical significance, Albedo suggested immediately. Prime number sequence utilizing transformation duration as communication medium. Ben nodded, the strategy crystallizing. Transformation durations following Fibonacci sequence would be recognizable as artificial pattern. Assuming companions possess sufficient pattern recognition capabilities, Albedo qualified. One definitely does, Ben confirmed, thinking of E's direct connection to Omnitrix technology. The question is whether Chronos will recognize what I'm attempting before it works. Temporal entities demonstrated extreme sensitivity to chronometric fluctuations, Albedo warned. Detection probability approaches certainty within minimal transformation sequences. Then we need distraction, Ben decided. Something to occupy Chronos' attention while I establish the resonance pattern. Albedo considered this requirement with analytical precision. Developmental research included experimental quantum resonance generators. Originally designed for communication with subatomic decision clusters, but potentially repurposable as chronometric distortion emitters. You can create a device that mimics temporal activity. Ben clarified. Affirmative. Sufficient to temporarily divert monitoring resources from secondary chronometric fluctuations. Another explosion, significantly closer, emphasized their dwindling timeframe. Golden light now illuminated the entire settlement as temporal constructs expanded their influence from the node's location. How quickly can you modify this equipment? Ben asked urgently. Galvan efficiency remains constant across evolutionary development. Albedo replied with unmistakable pride. Required modifications achievable within approximately 17 time units. While the Proto-Galvan worked with remarkable efficiency, Ben studied the Omnitrix's current configuration, planning his transformation sequence carefully. He would need to utilize forms with distinctive energy signatures in specific duration. Patterns to create a recognizable quantum resonance that Eunice might detect across temporal facets. The sequence would begin with Heat Blast, 3 seconds duration, followed by XLR8, 5 seconds. Then Diamond Head, 8 seconds. The pattern would continue, each transformation duration following the Fibonacci sequence precisely. Mathematical precision that could not occur naturally would signal intentional communication. Quantum resonance generator modifications complete, Albedo announced, indicating a device that hummed with distinctly non-standard energy patterns. Activation will create localized chronometric distortion mimicking temporal facet instability. Estimated effectiveness duration, approximately 40 time units before temporal entities identify artificial nature. That should be enough, Ben acknowledged. Activate when I begin the transformation sequence. Taking position in the settlement's central area to maximize quantum resonance projection, Ben prepared the Omnitrix for rapid sequential transformations. The energy requirements would strain its limited reserves in this restricted state, but the potential reward justified the risk. Commencing distraction protocol, Albedo announced. Activating the modified device. Immediately, the generator emitted pulsating energy waves that distorted local temporal perception, creating rippling disturbances in chronometric stability that would register as potential threats to Chronos' established isolation barriers. As predicted, the golden light surrounding the settlement shifted focus, temporal constructs redirecting attention toward the apparent instability. Ben seized the opportunity, activating the Omnitrix for his planned sequence. Heat Blast, 3 seconds of fiery transformation, quantum signature blazing across dimensional barriers. XLR8, 5 seconds of accelerated existence, vibrating at frequencies that penetrated temporal isolation. Diamond Head, 8 seconds of crystalline resonance, molecular structure amplifying quantum signals. Each transformation executed with precise timing, creating mathematical pattern no natural occurrence could replicate. With each form, Ben pushed his consciousness through the quantum connection inherent in the Omnitrix DNA samples, seeking contact with companions across temporal facets. Wildmutt, 13 seconds of enhanced sensory projection, reaching beyond conventional perceptual limitations. Stinkfly, 21 seconds, biochemical signatures creating unique resonance patterns. As the sequence continued, Ben felt something responding, subtle at first, then with increasing clarity. Quantum connections strengthened as other consciousnesses recognized the pattern and responded appropriately. Someone was receiving his signal and amplifying it through their own capabilities. Eunice. Her Omnitrix systems had detected the mathematical pattern and established reciprocal quantum connection. Through this tenuous link, Ben sensed her situation, trapped in far future Galvan Prime. Utilizing advanced temporal laboratories to analyze isolation barriers, the connection strengthened further as another consciousness joined, Adia, her temporal equipment detecting the quantum fluctuations and adding her own precisely calibrated response. Her tactical experience with cross-dimensional operations allowed her to enhance the growing connection. With each transformation, the quantum bridge strengthened. Rook's analytical mind contributed precise calibrations to stabilize the connection. Looma's disciplined focus provided structural integrity to the developing bridge. And finally, Ester's unique physiological adaptability created flexibility that allowed the quantum connection to accommodate their diverse temporal positions. As 4 arms, the final transformation. In his sequence, Ben felt the quantum bridge solidify into tangible connection. Across 6 different temporal facets of Galvan Prime's developmental history, their consciousnesses synchronized despite physical separation. It's working. He projected through the quantum link, thoughts transmitting across temporal barriers. Ben. Eunice's response carried across dimensions. Chronometric synchronization established through Omnitrix quantum entanglement. Brilliant approach. Wouldn't call it brilliant yet, Adia's distinctive mental voice interjected. We're still physically separated across temporal facets with limited communication window. But communication itself represents significant achievement, Rook contributed precisely. Knowledge sharing now possible to coordinate counter-strategy. Agreed. Looma's disciplined thoughts joined clearly. Tactical coordination across temporal divisions provides strategic advantage Chronos did not anticipate. I've been analyzing the isolation barriers from this end. Eunice continued urgently. Each of us occupies a specific developmental period in Galvan Prime's evolutionary timeline, periods when crucial decisions regarding genetic manipulation technology occurred. Chronos is attempting to influence each developmental stage simultaneously, Ben realized. Creating cascading corruption that alters the Omnitrix's foundational concepts across all time streams. Precisely, Eunice confirmed. I'm in far future Galvan Prime where the Omnitrix legacy is being evaluated for discontinuation. Adia appears to be in mid-development period when weaponization was considered. Rook occupies the ethical framework establishment phase. Looma witnesses initial xenogenetic stability trials. And I'm in a developmental stage focused on reversibility principles, Ester added. Her thoughts tinged with the distinctive resilience that defined her. Each period represents vulnerability point where fundamental Omnitrix principles could be corrupted. Which means Chronos isn't just attacking the node, Ben concluded. It's attempting to rewrite the entire developmental history of transformation technology simultaneously. Efficient strategy, Adia acknowledged with reluctant professional respect. Attack evolutionary timeline from multiple points to ensure corruption transcends individual intervention capability. Then we counter with similar strategy, Ben decided. Each of us must secure our respective temporal facet against corruption while simultaneously establishing resonance patterns that strengthen our quantum connection. Theoretical approach validated. Came an unexpected mental voice. Albedo's consciousness somehow incorporated into their quantum network through proximity to Ben. Synchronized intervention Acros. S developmental timeline would create self-reinforcing integrity field. The temporary connection began flickering as the distraction generator's effectiveness diminished. Temporal constructs were beginning to recognize the artificial nature of the chronometric disturbance. Connection destabilizing, Eunice warned urgently. Limited transmission time remaining. Synchronization parameters require identical chronometric resonance at precisely coordinated temporal points. In simpler terms, Ester translated, we all need to do something specific at exactly the same relative moment across our different time periods. The node, Ben realized, each temporal facet contains version of the convergence node at different developmental stages. If we each reach our version simultaneously, and establish identical chronometric resonance patterns, Eunice continued. The isolation barriers should theoretically collapse, Albedo completed, returning all entities to primary temporal manifestation point. But Chronos will defend each node manifestation, Looma pointed out pragmatically. And our individual capabilities remain limited within respective temporal restrictions. Then we use that limitation as strength. Ben proposed, strategy crystallizing. Each period represents specific development stage of transformation technology. We utilize exactly what's available in our respective periods, nothing more advanced. Nothing less effective. Fighting temporal disruption with developmental authenticity, Rook interpreted. Logical approach that Chronos would not anticipate. Synchronization point established. Eunice communicated rapidly as their connection weakened further. Local chronometric measurement. 17 units from mark. Each node approach must initiate simultaneously relative to local temporal flow. Acknowledged, came the collective response across quantum connection. Remember, Ben emphasized as the link began dissolving. Don't fight the temporal restrictions, use them. Whatever transformation technology exists in your period, employ it exactly as it would be used then. The quantum bridge collapsed as the distraction generator finally failed, golden. Energy immediately swarming toward Ben's position as temporal constructs detected the unauthorized communication. Impressive theoretical application, Albedo commented, already gathering portable equipment. though success probability remains statistically unfavorable given implementation variables. Then we change the variables, Ben replied with characteristic determination. You indicated Mo. Nument Alpha 7 contains the node manifestation for this period. Affirmative. Approximately 7 directional units toward solar ascension point. Ben checked the Omnitrix's power levels, signific. Amply depleted after the intensive transformation sequence. I'll need to conserve remaining energy for when we reach the node. We travel conventionally. Albedo's expression suggested skepticism. Riga. RDING. Conventional. Travel through predator-infested swamplands, but the Proto-Galvan offered no objection. Gathering essential equipment, they departed the research settlement as temporal constructs converged on their previous position. The journey toward Monument Alpha 7 required navigating increasingly unstable terrain. Chronometric disruption had accelerated environmental degradation, creating unpredictable sinkholes and methane eruptions throughout the swampland. Ben carried Albedo to facilitate faster progress, the Proto-Galvan directing their path based on extensive knowledge of local topography. Theoretical inquiry. Albedo ventured as they paused briefly at elevated ground to survey their route. Your device, the Omnitrix, represents completed application of principles currently in earliest developmental stages. It does, Ben confirmed, recognizing the scientific curiosity that transcended temporal concerns. And transformation process maintains consciousness continuity, while completely reconfiguring physiological structure. Complete genetic restructuring with full preservation of identity and conscious control, Ben elaborated, seeing no harm in confirming principle. Less albedo would develop independently across all time streams. The Proto-Galvan processed this confirmation with visible satisfaction. Validation of theoretical framework established by current research. Though implementation timeline clearly extends significantly beyond my functional lifecycle. Technology takes time to perfect, Ben acknowledged. But the foundation concepts you're establishing now are what make everything possible later. Precisely why these temporal entities target current developmental stage, Albedo observed shrewdly. Alter foundational concepts, change all subsequent applications. Their conversation halted abruptly as they crested final ridge overlooking Monument Alpha 7. The structure defied conventional architectural descriptions, neither wholly mechanical nor entirely organic. Yet incorporating elements of both. Ancient beyond Galvan historical records, it pulsed with golden energy that distorted surrounding reality. Temporal constructs swarmed around the monument, their movements following complex patterns that modified the structure's fundamental composition. The corruption process was visibly accelerating, sections of the monument darkening as Kronos' influence spread through its matrix. Node corruption approximately 73% complete. Albedo assessed with remarkable precision despite limited instrumentation. Critical threshold approaching for irreversible chronometric contamination. Ben checked his internal timing. Approximately 14 chronometric units remained before their synchronized intervention point. They needed to reach the node itself before that moment, but direct approach appeared impossible given the concentration of temporal constructs. We need distraction more substantial than quantum resonance, Ben observed. Something that occupies the majority of Kronos' extensions. Albedo studied the monument with analytical intensity. Monument design incorporates chronometric regulation subsystems, currently being repurposed by temporal entities. Overloading original regulatory functions could theoretically create temporary disruption in corruption process. How do we trigger that overload? The Proto-Galvan indicated a specific approach vector where construct concentration appeared marginally lower. Access point to regulatory subsystems located at original construction juncture. Modificati on of energy flow parameters would create cascade effect through monument architecture. Creating temporary disruption in Kronos' control, Ben completed the concept. But we'd need to reach that access point first. Examining the Omnitrix's remaining energy reserves, Ben calculated required resources precisely. One transformation with sufficient duration to reach the access point, followed by final transformation at synchronization moment. The margins left no room for error or additional requirements. I'll use gray matter, he decided, selecting the Galvan transformation. Your knowledge of the regulatory systems combined with gray matter's intuitive understanding of technology should allow quickest modification. The transformation proceeded smoothly, green energy reconfiguring his human form into Galvan physiology. Immediately, Ben experienced the characteristic intellectual enhancement, concepts previously at the edge of comprehension suddenly crystallizing into obvious logical frameworks. Fascinating experience, Albedo observed, studying Ben's transformed state with scientific interest. Self-imposed physiological reconfiguration with species-appropriate cognitive adaptation. Analysis later. Gray matter responded, voice-carrying characteristic Galvan cadence. Approximately 12 chronometric units remaining before synchronization point. They proceeded toward the monument using natural cover to avoid temporal construct detection. Gray matter's diminutive size proved advantageous, allowing navigation through microscopic passages in the swampy terrain. Albedo followed with surprising agility, evolutionary adaptations to primordial environment evident in his movements. Reaching the monument's perimeter required timing movements between construct patrol patterns. Gray matter calculated intervals precisely, identifying optimal approach vector toward the regulatory subsystem access point. Construct movement patterns exhibit algorithmic predictability despite apparent randomness, he observed, suggesting limited autonomous functionality beneath centralized control structure. Consistent with theoretical hierarchical processing models, Albedo concurred. Primary consciousness delegates localized functions while maintaining overarching directives. They reached the access point with approximately 8 chronometric units remaining before synchronization. The monument's regulatory subsystems presented complex interface challenge. Technology neither entirely mechanical nor recognizably electronic, yet incorporating principles of both within biological framework. Gray matter's enhanced intellect immediately began deciphering operational parameters while Albedo provided contextual information from previous research observations. Together, they identified critical regulation nodes controlling chronometric stability throughout the monument's structure. Reconfiguration of harmonic resonance parameters would create cascading overload through regulatory network. Gray matter determined, manipulating interface components with precise movements. Temporary disruption estimated between 15 and 20 chronometric units. Sufficient for synchronized intervention implementation. Albedo confirmed. With careful adjustments to systems designed by civilizations predating Galvan evolution, they initiated the overload sequence. Immediately, He monument's golden energy patterns fluctuated visibly, disruption spreading through its structure like ripples through liquid. Temporal constructs responded instantly, converging toward regulatory SUB systems as alarm patterns registered throughout their network. The distraction worked perfectly, drawing defensive resources away from the monument's core where the node manifestation pulsed with corrupted energy. Approximately 3 chronometric units until synchronization point, Gray matter noted, checking internal timing with Galvan precision. We must reach node manifestation immediately. With construct attention diverted toward regulatory disruption, they navigated internal monument passages toward central chamber. The architecture grew increasingly non-Euclidean as they approached the core, angles connecting impossibly. Pathways simultaneously ascending and descending, surfaces exhibiting properties that defied conventional physical laws. The central chamber contained pure manifestation of the convergence node, a geometric impossibility with more dimensions than conventional perception could process. Unlike previous node encounters, this manifestation appeared developmental rather than complete, the fundamental concept from which all subsequent node manifestations would evolve. Primordial node configuration, Albedo observed with scientific awe transcending immediate crisis. Chronometric convergence point in earliest developmental stage. The node pulsed with corrupted energy, golden light interspersed with darkness that spread like infection through its structure. Nose's influence had penetrated approximately 80% of its matrix, approaching irreversible threshold. 1 chronometric unit remaining, Gray matter announced, the Omnitrix symbol on his back. Flashing warning of imminent power depletion. Transformation energy reserves critically low. Theoretical inquiry, Albedo ventured despite crisis urgency. Does synchronized intervention require identical transformation manifestations across temporal facets? Gray matter considered this question with enhanced cognitive processing. Negative. Theoretical framework requires authentic development. Application unique to each temporal facet. This period represents earliest Galvan interaction with transformation concepts. Understanding dawned in Albedo's expression. Simplest application of GE/NETIC manipulation technology within current developmental capabilities would be direct DNA transfer between compatible organisms, gray matter completed. Temporary genetic integration through controlled exposure. The synchronization point approached with relentless chronometric precision. Across 6 temporal facets, their companions would be implementing period-appropriate transformatio N technologies, from primitive applications to advanced iterations beyond current comprehension. As the final moments before synchronization arrived, gray matter reached decisive conclusion. The Omnitrix's remaining energy reserves would prove insufficient for transformation powerful enough to affect the node directly. Alternative approach became necessary. Direct intervention required, he determined, turning to albedo. Developmental authenticity demands application of transformation technology at exactly appropriate evolutionary stage. Understanding passed between them, scientist to scientist transcending species differentiation. Albedo nodded agreement. Theoretical application validated through practical implementation. As synchronization point arrived with mathematical precision, Gr.EY matter placed his hand directly against the corrupted node surface. Simultaneously, albedo established physical contact with both gray matter and the node, creating 3-point connection between Galvan, transformed human, and primordial chronometric structure. The Omnitrix symbol flashed brilliantly as remaining energy reserves channeled through this connection. Rather than conventional transformation, it facilitated direct genetic exchange appropriate to current developmental period, temporary DNA transfer between connected organisms. Across all temporal facets simultaneously, similar interventions occurred with period-appropriate transformation technologies. Eunice in far future Galvan Prime utilized hyper-evolved Omnitrix technology to establish perfect genetic synchronization with advanced node manifestation. Adia employed militarized transformation equipment from mid-development period to force direct genetic override against corrupted node structure. Rook implemented ethical framework-constrained transformation protocols that prioritized harmony between biological and mechanical systems. Looma applied Tetraman stability principles to xenogenetic integration process, enhancing structural integrity against corruption. Ester utilized reversibility-focused transformation methods that emphasized adaptability and evolutionary resilience. 6 different approaches across 6 temporal facets, each perfectly authentic to its developmental period yet synchronized to single purpose. The combined effect transcended what any individual intervention could achieve. Reality shudder. As temporal isolation barriers collapsed simultaneously. Golden energy surged through all monument manifestations across developmental timeline, purging corruption with blinding intensity. Chronos's influence receded before combined implementation of transformation technology in its most authentic expressions. Ben experienced sensation of existing simultaneously across multiple developmental stages. Consciousness expanded beyond conventional limitations as temporal facets realigned. Through this expanded awareness, he perceived Chronos directly, the entity's vast consciousness recoiling from unexpected intervention methodology. Developmental authenticity protocol unanticipated, the entity's conceptual communication registered across all temporal manifestations. Recalculating approach parameters. Before Chronos could implement alternative strategy, the temporal realignment completed. Reality snapped back into singular configuration as isolation barriers dissolved completely. The 6 separated companions found themselves reunited in primary temporal manifestation point, ancient Galvan Prime at precise moment of transformation technology conception. The monument structure around THM stabilized as golden energy purged remaining corruption from its systems. The node at its center returned to natural chronometric harmony, darkness receding entirely from its matrix. Ben reverted human form as the eternal Omnitrix recalibrated, advanced functions returning as temporal restrictions lifted. The others materialized around him, Ester, Looma, Eunice, Rook, and Adia converging from their respective temporal facets. Each appeared momentarily disoriented by sudden transition, experiences across developmental timelines simultaneously integrated into conscious memory. That, Adia declared emphatically, was unnecessarily complicated even by temporal disruption standards. But effective, Eunice observed, checking her equipment. Chronometric readings stabilizing across all monitored timelines. Corruption purged from node network with 97% efficiency. The developmental authenticity approach, Rook analyzed thoughtfully. Utilizing transformation technolo. GY appropriate to each temporal facet rather than attempting advanced applications against restriction protocols. Fighting chronometric disruption with evolutionary accuracy, Ester summarized more succinctly. Using exactly what belonged in each period instead of forcing advanced methods. Looma surveyed their surroundings with tactical assessment. Temporary victory. The entity Chronos merely retreats to recalculate approach strategy. Not entirely. Ben corrected, the eternal Omnitrix displaying advanced diagnostic information. The synchronized intervention did more than purge corruptio. It established developmental integrity field across entire evolutionary timeline of transformation technology. Translation for non-temporal specialists. Adia requested with characteristic impatience. We didn't just clean up this mess, Ben explained, understanding flowing through his connection to the eternal Omnitrix. We vaccinated the entire developmental history against similar corruption attempts. Chronos can't approach transformation technology concepts through these methods again. Impressive implementation of theoretical framework, came Albedo's voice as the proto-Galvan emerged from temporary disorientation. Though entirely unprecedented in current developmental literature, the others regarded this ancestor of Ben's future adversary with varying degrees of surprise and caution. Ben quickly explained Albedo's crucial role in their successful intervention, emphasizing the proto-Galvan's contribution to developmental authenticity approach. Your assistance proved invaluable, Ben acknowledged formally. Though I suspect our interaction creates certain complexity regarding temporal continuity. Albedo dismissed this concern with characteristically Galvan pragmatism. Developmental integrity field presumably incorporates appropriate memory modification protocols to prevent paradoxical contamination across timeline. In simpler terms, Eunice translated, once we depart this temporal manifestation point, local memory patterns will adjust to maintain proper developmental sequence without contamination from future knowledge. So he won't remember helping us, Ester clarified, or seeing advanced transformation technology before its time. Theoretical concepts will persist while specific implementation details recede, Albedo corrected precisely. Scientific inspiration without contamination. The monument structure shuddered slightly as chronometric energy continued stabilizing throughout its systems. The node at its center pulsed with renewed harmony. Golden light flowing in natural patterns untainted by corruption. The node network is re-establishing proper connections across all temporal manifestation points, Eunice reported, monitoring the process through her equipment. Koros and Petropia nodes registering similar stabilization patterns. What about Earth? Ben asked, concerned about their original departure point. Temporal pathways reactivating systematically, she confirmed after checking specific readings. Return routes should become accessible once full stabilization completes. Adia studied her temporal equipment with professional assessment. Chronos has withdrawn presence from immediate chronometric vicinity but maintains observational position outside conventional temporal flow. It's watching us, Ben translated. Studying what we did and how we did it. Calculating countermeasures for future implementation attempts, Looma concluded with pragmatic acceptance. As any strategic opponent would. But with significantly reduced options. Rook pointed out. The developmental integrity field creates substantial barriers against similar corruption methodologies. The eternal Omnitrix completed its recalibration, advanced functions fully restored. Ben examined its display, noting new information regarding chronometric stability across connected timelines. The Omnitrix has integrated what we learned, he observed. The eternal protocol now includes developmental authenticity parameters in its defense systems. Adaptation remains consistent defining characteristic, Albedo noted with scientific appreciation. Theoretical framework validated through practical demonstration. As the monument completed its stabilization process, a familiar golden portal began forming near the chamber's edge, chronometric. Energy coalescing into pathway connecting temporal manifestation points. Return route established, Eunice confirmed. Connecting directly to Earth timestream at point approximately 12 chronological units after our original departure. Quote, minimal temporal displacement, Rook translated. Preferable outcome given potential complications of extended absence. Ben turned to Albedo, acknowledging He proto-Galvan's crucial contribution one final time. Your assistance proved essential to successful intervention. The developmental concepts you're establishing now will eventually save countless lives across multiple worlds. Anticipated outcome of theoretical research, Albedo responded with characteristic focus on scientific principles rather than practical applications. Though implementat, ion timeline clearly extends beyond individual contribution parameters. That's what scientific progress is, Ben replied with genuine appreciation. Building on foundations others established before us. The portal stabilized completely. Golden energy framing glimpse of familiar Earth landscape. Plumber headquarters visible in the distance beneath clear blue sky. Time to go, Adia announced, Al. Ready moving toward the portal with characteristic impatience. Before something else decides to disrupt chronometric stability for entertainment value. The integrity field should prevent similar disruptions for approximately 700 temporal cycles, Eunice assured them, gathering her equipment. Though continuous monitoring remains advisable. As the others prepared for departure, Ben Fei, LT the eternal Omnitrix communicating information directly to his consciousness, not through words but through intuitive understanding flowing from their deepened connection. The device had evolved further through their experiences. Integration between human and technology approaching symbiotic relationship beyond original design parameters. Esther approached as he processed this evolution, her EXPR. Eshin reflecting complex emotions beneath characteristic composure. Quite the adventure, even by your standards. Definitely beyond Tuesday-level problems, Ben agreed with tired smile. Maybe Wednesday and Thursday combined. The developmental authenticity approach was inspired, she acknowledged, unexpected admiration evident in her tone. Using each period's natural technological state instead of fighting against restrictions. Everyone contributed essential elements, Ben emphasized, unwilling to claim disproportionate credit. Your adaptability in your temporal facet proved crucial to synchronized intervention success. Something shifted in her expression, subtle recognition of deeper meaning beneath surface acknowledgement. Their shared experiences across temporal facets had Ed understanding transcending conventional interaction. We should talk, she suggested quietly. When things settle back to relative normality. Before Ben could respond, Looma approached with characteristic Tetraman directness. Tennyson, your leadership during temporal crisis demonstrated strategic aptitude beyond previous assessment parameters. Coming from a Tetraman warrior princess, this represented significant acknowledgement. High praise from House Red Wind, Ben responded, recognizing the cultural importance of such recognition. Accurate assessment transcends cultural constraints. Looma replied with unexpected philosophical depth. Experience across developmental timeline provided perspective regarding previous interactions. The implication wasn't subtle, they're complicated. History appeared differently when viewed through expanded temporal understanding. Like Esther, Looma had experienced perspective shift through their shared ordeal. We should discuss revised diplomacy. See protocols between our respective spheres of influence, she suggested with formal phrasing that barely concealed more personal intent. When circumstances permit appropriate consultation environment. Ben found himself momentarily speechless, simultaneously receiving clear interest signals from both women who had once featured prominently in his romantic history. Before he could formulate response to either, Adia interrupted with characteristic timing. If preliminary mating negotiations have concluded, she announced with mock formality that didn't entirely conceal genuine impatience, the temporal pathway requires transition before stability parameters deteriorate. The moment broken, they moved toward the portal where Rook and Eunice waited with carefully neutral expressions that suggested they had observed the interactions with professional discretion. As they prepared for final departure, Ben felt subtle chronometric disturbance, not threatening but distinctly intentional. The eternal Omnitrix responded with corresponding energy pattern, communicating directly with whatever caused the disturbance. Across dimensional barriers beyond conventional perception, he sensed Chronos observing their departure. The entity's vast consciousness registered something unexpected, not hostility or calculation, but recognition. Acknowledgement between fundamentally different beings pursuing divergent objectives through compatible methodologies. Developmental authenticity approach demonstrates evolutionary insight beyond anticipated parameters, the conceptual communication formed in Ben's expanded awareness. Current intervention methodology invalidated, recalibration required, not surrender. but strategic withdrawal to develop new approach, the entity's response to unexpected defeat. Yet beneath tactical assessment, Ben sensed something else. Genuine surprise at their synchronized application of transformation technology across developmental timeline. Chronos had expected brute force resistance using advanced capabilities against temporal restrictions. Their authentic implementation approach represented perspective beyond its extensive cross-temporal observations. Evolution isn't about perfect forms or predetermined outcomes, Ben responded through the chronometric connection. It's about adaptation to changing circumstances, finding unexpected solutions to new challenges. Philosophical framework noted, Chronos acknowledged. Further interaction anticipated following strategic recalibration. The connection dissolved as they stepped through the portal, chronometry. Sea energy washing over them as reality shifted from ancient Galvan Prime to contemporary Earth. The transition proceeded smoothly, temporal integrity maintained through properly stabilized pathway. They emerged onto familiar ground outside Plumber headquarters, the portal closing behind them with diminishing golden light. Earth's atmosphere felt remarkably normal after extended exposure to primordia. Galvan environment, oxygen content and atmospheric pressure creating subtle but noticeable comfort. Home, Ester observed with evident relief. Are close enough. Temporal displacement minimal, Eunice confirmed, checking her equipment. Approximately 14 standard hours since our original departure. Which means extensive debriefing protocols await, Rook noted with resigned acceptance of bureaucratic inevitability. Magister Tennyson will require comprehensive documentation of temporal intervention methodologies. You handle preliminary paperwork, Adia suggested with characteristic aversion to administrative responsibilities. I'll establish monitoring protocols for potential chronometric recurrence patterns. Before discussion could continue, the Plumber headquarters entrance opened as Max Tennyson emerged, expression shifting from concern to relief at sight of their intact return. Ben, he called, approaching quickly. The temporal distortions disappeared suddenly after you departed. We've been monitoring for your return since. Long story, Grandpa, Ben replied with weary smile. Involving multiple timelines, developmental authenticity protocols, and transformation. Technology evolution across 20,000 years of Galvan history. Max's expression suggested both confusion and resignation, familiar response to particularly complicated mission outcomes. I look forward to the full debriefing. For now, I'm just glad you're all back safely. As the others engaged with Max regarding immediate reporting requirements, Ben examined the Eternal Omnitrix one final time. The device had completed its evolutionary adaptation, golden chronometric elements fully integrated with standard transformation functions. Though external appearance remained relatively unchanged, internal functionality had expanded exponentially through their experiences. Most significantly, the connection between bearer and device had deepened beyond original design parameters. The Omnitrix was no longer merely technology, it had become something closer to partnership, both entities evolving through shared experiences across temporal dimensions. As Ben contemplated this evolution, he became aware of Ester and Looma both observing him with expressions suggesting unfinished business requiring attention. The complex emotions evident in their regard confirmed his earlier impression. Our shared ordeal across temporal facets had catalyzed significant perspective shifts regarding their respective relationships. Eunice approached, her enhanced perception apparently detecting his momentary uncertainty. Temporal experiences often accelerate emotional developmental processes that would otherwise require extended interaction periods. You noticed that too, Ben responded with rueful acknowledgement. Observational data suggests significantly altered relationship parameters following synchronized temporal intervention, she confirmed with scientific precision that didn't entirely mask personal interest. All participants experienced perspective expansion beyond conventional developmental timelines, meaning everyone's feelings got fast-forwarded by experiencing multiple time periods simultaneously. Ben translated for himself, simplified but functionally accurate assessment, Eunice acknowledged. Her expression softened slightly, synthetic humanity expressing genuine emotion, including my own, if relevant data point. Before Ben could respond to this unexpected revelation, Adia rejoined them after brief consultation with Max regarding monitoring protocols. Well, Tennyson, she announced with characteristic blend of confidence and calculated indifference, Looks like I'll be maintaining regular contact with this timeline sector given potential chronometric recurrence scenarios. Her emphasis on regular contact carried unmistakable additional meaning beyond professional requirements. The temporal accords mandate sustained observation following significant timeline intervention events. She continued casually. Diplomatic liaison responsibilities require periodic consultation with relevant local authorities. Translation. She intended to incorporate ER, specifically Ben's location, into her regular operational parameters. 5 women. 5 completely different backgrounds, personalities, and relationships to him. 5 distinct connections deepened her unprecedented shared experiences across temporal dimensions, and all apparently expecting some form of continued relationship development following their return. Temporal crisis management dimly seems straightforward by comparison, Ben muttered to himself. The eternal Omnitrix pulsed gently against his wrist, as if acknowledging the irony. Through their deepened connection, Ben sensed almost amused response. Evolutionary challenges transcended mere physical or technological development. Adaptation required navigating complex emotional and interpersonal dimensions with same thoughtful consideration applied to chronometric threats. As they proceeded toward Plumber headquarters for formal debriefing, Ben reflected on their extraordinary journey. What began as investigation into temporal anomalies had evolved into profound experience across developmental timeline, connecting past, present, and future through transformation technology's evolutionary history. The eternal Omnitrix presented more than enhanced capabilities or chronometric manipulation. It embodied continuous adaptation, the quintessential evolutionary principle applied across technological, biological, and interpersonal dimensions. Through their synchronized intervention, they had demonstrated that authentic development, rather than forced advancement, created strongest resistance against corruption. What if our challenges awaited? Whether Kronos' eventual return with recalibrated approach or the significantly more complicated matter of 5 distinct relationship possibilities, the fundamental principle remained consistent. Evolution proceeded not through predetermined paths but through authentic adaptation to changing circumstances. And adaptation, Ben had learned across multiple timelines and countless transformations, remained his greatest strength. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.